This is 5 Live Formula One with Jenny Gow.
Hello and welcome to our coverage. It's round 11. It's the Hungarian Grand Prix, the last race before the summer break. And in true summer fashion, the rain has just started to pour down on the grid as everybody stands and waits. And Max Verstappen is pulled forward by Jean Todt, the president of the FIA, just to provide him a little bit of shelter from the rain that is now coming down. And we are ready for Battle Royale to commence. It is Jolyon Palmer, Jack Nichols and myself, Jenny Gow, Andrew Benson, the BBC's chief F1 writer as well, standing by just in case we need him. And Jack, this is game on. This is great stuff. This is the championship battle that F1 fans have been waiting for years.
Yeah, and it was already going to be quite an interesting Grand Prix, but now with the rain not quite teeming down, but fairly heavy down at the start of the grid, it's going to be a really, really interesting start. All the drivers have got brollies up. I feel for the 6 kids who have just played a lovely string version of the Hungarian national anthem, but they didn't have any brollies, so all they're just there in their white shirts and black trousers, and all their cellos are getting wet.
Sebastian Vettel just walks back with Same Love and the rainbow emblazoned on a T-shirt, the moment where they can all take their specific beliefs, take a knee if they want to, marked beautifully and respectfully. As you say, the rain dripping down now. Little marquee kind of things, temporary put-ups. If you've had a barbecue this summer, you'll probably have had one there as well. Just popped up over the cars, keeping them dry, keeping all the technical equipment dry as well. Jolyon Palmer, I mean, we've spoken a lot about strategy yesterday with Red Bull doing something different to Mercedes, but that all goes for fudge now because it's raining.
Yeah, I'm buzzing. This is great. We had a little bit of drama, and it was set up nicely anyway, but we all like a wet race, and there's nothing better than when it rains just before the start, and all the plans that the teams meticulously go through with the drivers goes out the window. They're going to be starting not on slick tyres now, so it's going to be probably intermediate tyres. So strategy, all the qualifying ramifications that Hamilton started on the medium, Verstappen on the soft, that's out the window. The grip level's obviously going to be really, really low suddenly. The drivers have not done laps to the grid to feel it. So they're only going to do a slow formation lap, and then they're going to be unleashed in race conditions to go and explore how much water's out there, what the grip is like. And in the midst of this, we've got a championship battle.
Brilliant. Game on. Steve Sell has been in touch saying, come on the rain. If you do want to get in touch, hashtag BBC F1 on social media. Always love to hear from you. Max Verstappen just having a few final words of conversation. Jack, there are rules when it comes to what you're allowed to talk about with your team when you're doing your formation lap, and that can throw a spanner in the works.
Yeah, although I don't see many. No one at the front is going to dive into the pits to change tyre, I don't think. I don't think the conditions are going to change that dramatically. Basically, you can't have too much communication with the team on the formation lap. Maybe someone at the back will take a bit of a gamble. The drivers can speak to the team, but the teams can't speak to the drivers, is the fundamental rule on the formation lap. So the driver can say, I'm going to come in for slicks or I'm going to come in for wets on the formation lap, but the teams can't be like, yeah, okay, or no, don't, or whatever. So that's kind of in the driver's hands. So fascinating to see what happens and what they choose at the start as well, because are we pretty confident it's wet tyre ready now, Jolyon?
Intermediate tyres.
Yeah.
The grooved halfway house, really.
But with that looks pretty certain.
I think it does. There looks like there's just a rainy glaze over the track, which is going to mean that your slick tyres are just not going to be connecting properly with the track surface, and therefore you're going to be skating on quite a lot. On top of that, the temperatures are not going to be very high, the tyres, because they'll be on the car in the blankets now, but then the formation lap will be slow and tricky on a slick tyre, and then you've got to start the race having sat on the grid for 30-40 seconds if you're at the front, waiting for everyone else to line up. I think it's going to have to be an intermediate start, looking at the conditions, and it's still drizzling down. Is anyone going to be brave and do something different? I think it's probably wet enough to be pretty solidly intermediates right now.
Rain apparently for the next half an hour or so, the radars are saying at the moment. And the two drivers that you'd back the most when it comes to wet weather conditions would be, Jolyon?
Hamilton or Verstappen, of course.
It's a loaded question, clearly.
Yeah. You would back them, but this is different to usual. They're racing against each other in these conditions, so highly pressured. They've both been stunning in the wet in the past. Hamilton's win in Turkey last year when the Mercedes wasn't that quick was incredible. Verstappen won the race the year before in Hockenheim in really, really tricky wet conditions as well. So they've both got great prowess in the wet. They're starting at the front. Valtteri Bottas, I imagine, is going to be falling back at the start, particularly with Verstappen in third. I think Verstappen will figure out the grip quicker than Bottas. But there are 2 Mercedes at the front still, and there are 2 Red Bulls behind. So they've got to find a way, the Red Bulls, to get around the Mercedes, even if they're more confident and they've got more grip. They got to wriggle themselves around at least Bottas, and then Verstappen can go and hunt down Lewis Hamilton.
10 minutes till the start of the race. Now, Jolyon, I wanted to ask your opinion, because yesterday in the press conference after qualifying, Verstappen kind of cut Tom Clarkson, who was asking the questions, cut him off and said that I won't repeat the exact words, otherwise they'll get us into trouble, but basically said to stop asking questions about the battle. Lewis Hamilton sat there, shrugged a little bit, didn't really get drawn into it. But does Verstappen raising his hackles mean that it's getting to him, or does it mean that actually he is rising above it and doesn't want to talk? How do you read that?
I'd love it if I was Lewis Hamilton in that situation and I see my rival it was expletives used in this right at the start of a press conference, and he just shut it down immediately in a came from nowhere. I think Tom Clarkson, who was asking the questions, was very surprised at his reaction, because of course it's a normal thing to ask. They had contact the last time they raced, they start together, they're championship rivals. How is this going to unfold? Max will have been asked that question so many times as he retorted back. But if I'm Lewis Hamilton at that, you'd love to see everyone else get riled up and you can just keep calm, do your thing. And the same with the fallout after Silverstone as well. For Mercedes, seeing Red Bull go to all these lengths to try and prove that Hamilton was in the wrong. They sent Alex Albon, the test driver, out to go and repeat Hamilton's line and to cops at Silverstone and try and convince the stewards that the penalty should be more, and they were raging. If I'm Mercedes and I'm Hamilton, you love to see it. You love to see that something's underneath their skin. I had a GP2 title fight with Felipe Nasr, Brazilian, who went on to Formula One. And I'd love to wind him up. I'd love to. It's sport.
I just don't see the sort, Jolyon.
Believe it or not, it was great. We had a good fight in Hungary, but you love to see your rival a little bit rattled, and Max certainly came across that way yesterday. Will that be red mist today, though? That's the thing. You don't know how he's going to react with it. Has he got, the fire in his belly to go and produce one of the great drives, or is he his mind elsewhere and he's frustrated and he's going to make a mistake as a result of it? That's what you don't know. But I think if I'm Mercedes, I'm liking to see that the Red Bull team are generally fired up and not happy about things.
Toto Wolff just casing around, sort of walking. Oh, it just feels a little bit like a caged beast at the moment. It's got to be so right, on brand, on message all the time. And he's just looking at the cars. They're under their little awnings at the moment, keeping them dry. The tarmac around those awnings getting a little more saturated as the rain continues to fall down. The grid, quickly, I'll run through it. It's Hamilton to Bottas, Verstappen, Perez, Gasly, Norris, Leclerc, Ocon, Alonso and Vettel. That's your top 10. Then it's Ricciardo, Stroll, Raikkonen, Giovinazzi, Sainz, Tsunoda, Russell, Latifi, Mazepin, and Schumacher was given permission to start, even though he couldn't qualify after a big crash yesterday. A note on Max Verstappen, Jack. They've changed his engine overnight. It's quite unusual. They found a crack, didn't they, after what happened last time out at Silverstone?
Yeah, it is unusual, but in going to the grid is where I think you would find or come across an issue with that engine if it didn't go properly. And also overnight, there's plenty of time. I think a lot of the times where you think of like a Charles Leclerc or something, I suppose that accident in Monaco, and he ended up having trouble on his way to the grid when they repaired that car. So I think overnight it's not too much of a drama for the Red Bull team, and I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue. Obviously, unless it is, but in general, it isn't.
Was it Hungary last year that they had to replace parts on Verstappen's car?
Yeah, he crashed
on the
in the
grid,
drizzle. He
wasn't it?
crashed on the drizzle on the way to the start, didn't he?
That's a panic job. This one, as you say, relaxed. It does mean they could have taken a third power unit already. Remember, if you go into your fourth power unit, you do get a grid penalty, a 10-place grid penalty, but we're not there yet, so no penalties for Verstappen. And Jolyon, 100 F1 wins. That's what Hamilton even is going for today at a track that he knows and loves and goes pretty well at.
Yep, he's won here 8 times in the past. It's such a good circuit for him, and he delivered a brilliant pole position yesterday. And I think in normal circumstances, I would have him down as favourite to win the race. And I still probably do, even though there's a bit of drizzle in the air. He's the man with the most success in the field, and he starts at the front. Obviously, he's the favourite for this Grand Prix, but it's not going to be that simple. It's the fight with Verstappen that's going to be the drama, as we all expect. The first race since they clashed at Silverstone, and Lewis has the experience. He's been here before. He's going to be expecting Max Verstappen to be so aggressive at the start. But how much does Hamilton counter aggression with aggression? We saw it obviously at Silverstone where they clashed. It was the first time we've really seen Hamilton fight back with aggression to match Verstappen's level. This time, maybe if he thinks he's got the faster car, he's on the better starting strategy if it was dry. Maybe he thinks, actually, I don't need to risk the crash here. I can play the long game and still come out on top.
Well, elsewhere, you've got Gasly best of the rest when it comes to starters in P5 for AlphaTauri. He's next to Lando Norris. Jack, Lando has been exceptional so far this season.
Yep, really, really remarkable. Daniel Ricciardo, his teammate, said yesterday, this is kind of just the level I'm at. He said, I'm not giving up. I'm not, calling it quits. But it's been like this all season, so I don't expect it to turn around pretty soon before the end of the year, which was quite a honest and remarkable thing for Ricciardo to say. And Andreas Seidel, the team boss, said, well, you have Ricciardo who's struggling, but you do have Norris on absolutely superb form at the moment. So that 6th place is going to be a good starting position. We'll see how high up the field he can finish, because if he wants to finish in 3rd place in the championship, where he currently is lying, Bottas and Perez are his 2 rivals, and they start 2nd and 4th.
Elsewhere, I suppose, worth looking out for George Russell. Still after those points, Jolyon, for Williams. Going to be a very, very tough gig from the last but one row of the grid.
Indeed. Williams not looking so quick here. Russell had got himself into Q3, the top 10 on the grid for the last couple of races, but 17th today. Of course, everyone now, we can see, is starting on those intermediate tyres, and that's the sort of thing that can give opportunities further back. So for George Russell, for Williams, hasn't scored a point yet in that team, has had a few opportunities. Starting 17th in a dry race, no chance. Now there's some rain around, everyone's on the intermediate tyres, the strategies are up in the air. Could be some collisions on the first lap particularly, but early on when the grip is unknown and low, that's the sort of thing that can give him a chance.
What does it feel like to start a wet race compared to normal? What are the sensations that you feel as a driver?
Oh, it's so much more sketchy. The whole thing.
Sketchy.
Yeah, it is, because the grip level, you're so tuned in to your procedures for the start in dry conditions. You know exactly what you're doing. You know roughly where you can brake for the first corner. You know if you want to go inside or outside. When it rains, you've got no idea on any of this. You don't know how much grip there's going to be when you put your foot down and try and get away from the line. You're just picking it up as you're going along. It's where the greatest drivers shine in these sort of conditions. It's super tough, and then they've got everyone else around you going through the same thing.
And as you said earlier on, Jenny, this rain is sort of expected for the next half an hour or so, but when is it going to dry? Is it going to dry? It's 27 degrees air temperature.
I hope the rain does come, because I think we should have started slicks.
Oh, that's so interesting. Hamilton's saying, I wish the rain did come, because we should start on slicks.
The track's drying quite a bit in the time when we've been talking for 10-15 minutes, and already the track looks a little bit drier. Getting ready to go. The teams are all locked into intermediate, so they're all in the same boat. But I don't think it's going to be that long before slicks are the faster tyres, but the drizzle's still coming down.
Oh, this is tense. It's on a knife edge, and we love it. You're listening to 5 Live Formula One. Let's cross over to our commentary duo ahead of this race. 70 laps on the board. It is Jolyon Palmer and Jack Nicholls.
The tyre warmers getting removed off Max Verstappen's car. Yeah, there is a sprinkling of rain, but the track is not absolutely drenched like it was, for example, in Imola earlier on this year. Not even a safety car start as well. Not even start behind the safety car, do a lap, and then line up on the grid. It's just out, and the track's almost bone dry in the starting grid positions where the tents have been. So we are in for a very, very interesting Hungarian Grand Prix. It is 2 o'clock here on 5 Live Sports Extra. Here it comes. So the cars making their way around on their formation lap. Hamilton is going to be on pole position. Bottas alongside him on the front row in the Mercedes. The two Red Bulls are on row 2, Verstappen and Perez. Gasly is 5th, Norris is 6th. Leclerc, Ocon, Alonso and Vettel complete the top 10. Then you've got Daniel Ricciardo in 11th place, Stroll 12th, Raikkonen 13th, 14th for Giovinazzi, 15th for Carlos Sainz. Tsunoda, Russell, Latifi, Mazepin and Schumacher, the 20 drivers. So the car's making their way up towards turn 4, and actually it's a bit wetter, isn't it, up at the top of the circuit at turn 4, but not much spray off the back of the cars at all. But I don't think you'd want to be on slicks.
The rain's just coming down heavier right now. When Hamilton said it, I think it was, you might have thought it, but the rain's just starting to come down a little bit heavier again. And the circuit's very compact. There's no big areas where you run off towards like a couple of kilometres away. It's a very compact circuit, a sort of natural amphitheatre. So when the rain hits one part of the track, it pretty much coats the whole lot pretty quickly. It's definitely intermediates, and the grip level is not that high.
This is going to be a really, really fascinating run down to the first corner. Who is going to get the best start? Who is going to hold the lead?
It is.
And Hamilton just confirming it is intermediates, because where he was starting on the grid, it's going to be quite dry. You know, where they had the kind of gazebo up. This is going to be a really, really fascinating start to this Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton is going to start on pole position. Valtteri Bottas is alongside him in the Mercedes. Then Max Verstappen, Hamilton's title rival, the man who he crashed with in Silverstone 2 weeks ago, starts 3rd on the grid. And it is raining here, Jolyon Palmer.
Yeah, coming through the final corners, ready to line up. Anything can happen with this sort of start. The drivers have got no idea how much grip there is. There was a little bit of drizzle, then it got harder, then Lewis Hamilton thought he should be on slicks. Now he's sure he's on the right tyres, which are the intermediates. Everyone on the sort of half-rain tyres. And how do they go? How do they know where to brake at the first corner? They're all going to arrive together, and they've got to sort of guess how much grip there is.
He's going to be needing to channel his inner Duncan Scott here, isn't he, Lewis Hamilton, with the rain coming down at the Budapest circuit, about 20 minutes outside the capital city of Hungary. The fans are packed into the grandstands, a lot of them now happy that they've decided to put their ponchos on because the rain is coming down. All of the cars now are lining up on the grid. Hamilton is trailing Max Verstappen in the championship by 8 points. If the race finishes like this, Hamilton would take the lead of the championship. And Antonio Giovinazzi in the Alfa Romeo is gambling. He's coming to the pits to change onto dry tyres. I don't think that's going to work out for him, but all the cars are now lined up on the grid, ready to go in the Hungarian Grand Prix. Hamilton versus Verstappen, round 2 coming up. Verstappen is 3rd on the grid. Hamilton's on pole as the race gets underway, and it's a pretty decent start from Hamilton. Bottas has got away very badly indeed, and Lando Norris is going to the inside of the Mercedes. Bottas has been all the way back down to 5th place already. So Hamilton leads, Verstappen is 2nd, and Bottas hits Norris, and Norris hits Verstappen. And Verstappen has been hit again on the opening lap of a Grand Prix. He's still going, but he's got damage. Bottas is going to be out of the running. Hamilton has a huge lead, and Esteban Ocon in the Alpine is up into 2nd place. Sebastian Vettel in the Aston Martin is up into 3rd position. Valtteri Bottas got it all wrong at the first corner, went into the back of Norris, who went into the back of Verstappen, who halfway around this opening lap is down in about 10th or 12th position. Disaster for the championship leader again.
And Perez is at the back with him. Both Red Bulls caught up in that. It was Bottas who got a really poor start from 2nd, was swamped. Verstappen came through, Norris came through, and then he missed his braking point. I said, how do they judge where to brake at the start here? Really tricky conditions, but he just misjudged it. He went too deep. Everyone else was more cautious, and Bottas rammed the back of Norris, sent Norris into Verstappen. They played skittles down at turn 1. Safety car's out, Bottas is out, but Verstappen has a lot of work to do. How much damage has he got?
Well, Verstappen, it looked like he had a lot of damage on the side of the car. Charles Leclerc is out of the Grand Prix. He's got his head in his hands. So Hamilton leads the race. Esteban Ocon is second in the Alpine. Third is Sebastian Vettel in the Aston Martin. Carlos Sainz started this race 15th. He's now 4th after the opening lap in the Ferrari. Yuki Tsunoda is started 16th and is now 5th. Nicholas Latifi in the Williams is 6th. Then it's Alonso. Then it's George Russell up into 8th place. 9th is Max Verstappen, so he hasn't dropped too far back down the field. We're just getting a replay of the first corner, Jolyon.
So Bottas rams Norris, and then he rams Perez. Norris rams Verstappen. So Ricciardo lost it on his own, I think, on the exit of turn 1, and that's where a few others got caught up. So the first bit is Bottas into Norris into Verstappen, and then Bottas takes out Perez. Leclerc looks like he gets a hit from Gasly on the inside of turn 1, and then Ricciardo loses it on the exit. And that's where it was just everyone disappearing in separate incidents. This is the sound of Bottas.
Yep, he got on the brakes just too late, skidded into the back of Norris and wiped into Max Verstappen. Well, the safety car is deployed. We'll be back here for the remainder of the Grand Prix in a bit here on 5 Live, but we'll go back to Kelly for now with Hamilton leading the Grand Prix, and Verstappen has just been in the pits, actually, and so he is now down in 13th position, Kelly. Wow!
Right, I'll be amazed if Verstappen doesn't have significant damage.
It was a huge hit.
It was a really big hit. Norris has continued as well, and I'll be amazed if Norris doesn't have significant damage.
There's so much debris. Yeah, copying the track out here.
Hamilton's saying a lot of debris, got to clean the track. Let me just bring you through that top 10 again, because now Mick Schumacher is into the points in 10th place. The order is Hamilton, Ocon, Vettel, Sainz, Tsunoda, the top 5, Latifi, Alonso, Russell, Raikkonen and Schumacher, the top 10, Jenny Gao.
Yeah, just having a look at Verstappen coming back out on track. Now, whether something had got caught underneath, I think it was a bit of his own bodywork that flew out just as he was coming back onto the track. Perez is now out of his car as well. The safety car still going round, but that was like a game of 455-metre skittles. Literally anyone that was on the left-hand side of the track going down to turn 1 just got wiped out, which means that all of the people that were starting, you know, back from 40, 56, they've just had a clear run straight through. That's how Ocon's got himself up to second. It was incredible. You wanted to hug the inside and stay clear of it all.
Red flag. Race is stopped. Red flag, presumably to clear the debris and various cars. So the race is suspended. The cars will return to the pit lane.
Okay, Max, for info, we have lost the barge board on the right-hand side. Lost the barge board on the right-hand side.
But they can...
Yes.
But they can fix that now with the red flag for Verstappen. That's the positive news for the Dutchman, who's 13th.
Yeah, so a little bit as Hamilton had a reprieve with the red flag at Silverstone, after the contact with Verstappen, Max did lose. It was the barge board that flicked off the car as he left the pit lane, and it was the whole thing that just came off. That was the right-hand side that got whacked by Lando Norris, and very surprised that the whole thing's just come off, but it did. But they can repair the car. How much can they repair? They can give it a good check over, see what they can do and how long this red flag period is going to be. We don't know yet. But likewise, Lando Norris, Daniel Ricciardo as well, right down the back. I don't know. We didn't see enough of the contact that he had. What happened with Ricciardo, but Norris, huge whack in the back from Bottas. Then he was sent into Verstappen, so he's had double contact, but managed to haul that McLaren back round, so he can maybe get a few repairs and get going again. In it all, Perez couldn't make it round. Perez is done. He was smashed into by Bottas on the outside. Bottas, the smasher, is out, down at turn 1. Leclerc, I think, had his own incident, and I think it was with Pierre Gasly at turn 1. He's out, and Lance Stroll, somewhere in all of it, has parked up as well.
Quixotic Geek on hashtag BBC F1 says that start was awful. Let's do it again, which I think is what's going to happen, obviously, when the race gets back underway. Valtteri Bottas just sitting on the tyre barriers, Jenny, on the exit of turn 1, swinging his legs, looking fairly forlorn.
I mean, normally you get picked up pretty quickly if you've gone out at the turn 1 incident, because the medical car, the safety car come round after you and they can just collect you up and take you back. There's too many of them to fit in there. So he's got a long wait, just sat there mulling over mulling over what's become of him. He started in P2, had no traction off the start line. It was an absolute mess for him. And is this the end of, you know, his time as a Mercedes driver? Because yes, okay, it's likely that he'll see out the season, but they've always said this summer was the time when they make a decision between whether it was going to be Bottas in the car next season or George Russell. And I wonder if that's just the final nail in the coffin for Bottas.
Well, he did the best possible job, didn't he, for the team? Wiping out both the Red Bulls. Obviously, I'm being very, very flippant and facetious there, but it was a grid penalty for Bottas for the next race or something, because...
Well, we'll have to be. I think it's well, how much leeway do the stewards give him for the conditions? That's the question. But it's quite clearly Bottas's error. Stroll was completely out of control up the inside, so he's made another big error. That's what's wiped into Leclerc. Stroll on the grass on the inside doing his own thing. Just on the brakes, I think he lost it. And out Leclerc. Then Leclerc hit Ricciardo. So that's the next bit of skittles at lower speed. But Leclerc out of the race. The side pod cover ripped off the Ferrari, and that was him minding his own business, wiped out by the Aston Martin. And then Ricciardo, sadly on the outside, getting flipped around as well, but Ricciardo's still going and shouldn't have big damage from that. Big impact from behind, and from behind Lewis Hamilton, the sound you can hear there. Bottas was actually the most cautious initially into turn one. He actually lifted off and looked like he was braking pretty early, but then he realised that he was braking too early and got back on the throttle momentarily, which was his critical error. That's what then sent him in a little bit too deep.
What an idiot! Safety car.
What an idiot, says Sergio Perez. Jenny?
Yeah, just having a look at the damage, and I've asked the team if they know what damage has been done to Max Verstappen's car. Clearly it's a break for him getting that red flag, much like it was last time out for Lewis Hamilton at Silverstone after his contact with Verstappen, being able to go into the pit lane and they can work on anything and try and change the elements that are damaged. And my word, there was a lot of damage to Verstappen's car.
We are sorry, guys. That's it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about Bottas. He got onto the brakes. Everybody started swooping past him, so he floored the throttle a little more.
And the impact he had was really big. The first one into Norris is sort of okay-ish. It's big enough that it actually ripped off the suspension. That is the thud of Lando Norris into Verstappen. Not Lando's fault at all. Not Max's fault either.
Hey, what the happened there?
I think one of the McLarens has hit you.
They don't watch the race.
Well, it was
Too busy looking at the numbers that they haven't seen the fight at the lead of the race at turn one.
To be fair, it was the McLaren that hit him. So
It was.
Got it right.
It was more the caution where he didn't seem to be very sure about what had happened. That was the interesting point. The McLaren hit him because the McLaren was smacked by the Mercedes of Valtteri Bottas. The front and rear axle looks to be pointing in a straight line for Verstappen and for Norris somehow, and that's a critical part. The next is the engine, the gearbox that has taken a massive whack for Norris.
They didn't stop. They went into me.
We need to stop.
Frustration for Charles Leclerc.
That's an incident that has happened so many times on F1 on the PlayStation, I think. Everyone just braking late, everyone thinking they're going to make some moves at the first corner, and it's just someone goes in too deep, rams the next, who rams the next, and just carnage on the exit of turn one. Some in the Bottas incident not making it even to turn into the corner. Lando Norris is one of them, Max Verstappen another, and Sergio Perez. But then there's the other incident of Lance Stroll missing his braking point by a mile, going over the grass in a desperate measure to not do the same as Bottas, but he did effectively a little bit later on into Leclerc. Stroll and Leclerc are out, and Leclerc went on to tap Ricciardo, who's still in.
So, red flag conditions while they just clear up all the cars and the various debris around the circuit. A reminder, the order is Hamilton, Ocon, Vettel, Sainz, Tsunoda, the top five. Latifi, Alonso, Russell, Raikkonen, Schumacher, the top 10. Gasly, Ricciardo, Verstappen, Mazepin, Norris and Giovinazzi, who came back into the pits to put on intermediate tyres after that opening lap. And out of the Grand Prix, Perez, Bottas, Leclerc and Stroll. So three big hitters.
What an extraordinary gamble that was for Giovinazzi.
It's mad. I loved it.
No one could make it stop on intermediates. And he's coming for slicks. Luckily, they were all in the wall when he came out of the pits, and he managed to not skate on his slicks to cause any accidents. But yeah, that was a brave one from Giovinazzi, but he's still going as a result of potentially coming into the pits, ironically. Big damage to the floor of Lando Norris. That will need if they can do a floor change, he might get away with it. The left-hand rear part of the floor is destroyed. That's going to cost him a huge amount of downforce.
Jenny.
Yeah, just looking at the damage up and down the pit lane, I mean, it looks just like, I don't know, a hungry monster's gone chomping through the paddock and just taken large gouging bites out of several of the cars. As you say, a lot of the drivers taking the opportunity to get their cars really looked over, trying to fix as much damage as is absolutely possible. Our indicators have just said turn 1 incident under investigation, just generally as a blanket. Of course it's going to be under investigation. So much of a mess to look at from that. I mean, we've looked at the replays and can pretty much analyse it quickly. If you're one of the drivers, it's harder to know what's happened because you weren't listening to us. But I think if you could just have got your car round, no matter how much damage you had to it, just get your car back to the pit lane. Those drivers like Norris with lots of damage are just, they're still in with a chance. Perez, Bottas, Leclerc and Stroll, no chance.
I think the incident is actually a lot more simple than it seems when you watch it back. There's two aggressors.
And both of them are out of the race. There's no point investigating it now.
Yeah, exactly. Bottas was out of control, caused a load of carnage. Lance Stroll was out of control, caused a load of carnage. Everyone else was basically seemed to be minding their own business, getting around the corner by braking early enough. And it was those two that had gone in too deep and started the skittles. They're both out of the race, as Jack said, and any repercussions that they may face will be a grid drop for the next race after the summer break. I just wonder now, how long does the red flag? When do we get going again? It can't take that long to sweep the track, pick up the cars. Yeah. There's no barrier repairs needed, so it's almost like the longer the red flag is, the more that teams can work on the cars. But is that why we're still under red flag? What's the work? Why are we under red flag at this point when all the cars, I think, have been collected? Now, Sergio Perez is running back to the pits, and the track can be swept fairly quickly in that mainly one area of incident down at turn 1. So there's actually probably no need, unlike some other red flags, where there's big barrier damage that can sometimes take a lot longer to get going again.
Yeah, hopefully it shouldn't be too long before the red flag comes in. It went out at 10 minutes ago, I would say. The red flag went out. So
if you're McLaren or Red Bull, with Norris and Verstappen's cars in relative tatters, you're going to be on the radio, aren't you, to race director and just give us an indication.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be caught halfway changing something and then realise that the race is going to restart before you're ready and basically not be able to go. Race will restart in approx 15 minutes. Just been told, though. So that is a fairly clear indication.
Yeah. So that suggests we'll get the 10-minute warning in approx 5 minutes. Jenny.
Yeah, just having a look at who were the big winners out of that. And Nicholas Latifi up to 6th place, which is incredible. He made the most places of anyone, up 12 positions. And you just have that wonder of whether it's going to go all the same way all over again of George.
Unfortunately, we've got to retire the car, so Lando won't take part in the restart.
OK, thanks for letting us know, Paul.
So McLaren and Lando Norris out of the Grand Prix. So all of those battling over third in the Drivers' Championship out, really. Perez, Bottas and Norris. So Norris will be third in the Drivers' Championship going into the summer break. Absolutely right about Latifi. Sainz and Tsunoda both made up 11 places. Latifi made up 12. And at least Russell made up places on the opening lap for once, Jenny.
Yeah, I just feel that he might get kubitzered in the fact that Latifi's made up so many places, now 6th, and Russell is 8th. OK, there's a long way, literally a long way to go in this race because we've only had 3 laps. But, the irony, if Russell wouldn't score points and Latifi does, the irony is just horrible.
Hold your horses.
Okay, I like
Hold
to get
your
carried away.
horses.
I'm a fan of F1. It's fun to get carried away.
There's 67 laps to go.
I know, it's great.
No, the 5 drivers are out of the race now. With Norris out, 5 drivers are out. 4 of them are big guns. Huge opportunity now for everyone else. Esteban Ocon,
Stroll's a point scorer.
He's a potential point scorer. So he's not, and yeah, Stroll is by no means an irrelevance, but you've lost Bottas in a Mercedes from the front row, Leclerc in a Ferrari that nearly won the last Grand Prix, Perez, who started on the second row in a Red Bull that's certainly capable of getting on the podium, and now Lando Norris, who started 6th and is 3rd in the championship. That's some really big names not starting this Grand Prix. So there's going to be some, with every bit of bad luck in the race for 5 of the drivers or more. We don't know about Verstappen. Can Verstappen get back into the Grand Prix? There's going to be some huge winners at the end of this one. Who can maximise the remaining 67 laps and get some first points maybe for a Williams, maybe a Haas, who knows, with more incidents and reliability problems. And then you've got people fighting for a podium. Ocon currently 2nd, Vettel's up in 3rd, Yuki Tsunoda's in 5th, just behind Carlos Sainz. The order is so shaken up. The one bit of, pretty much the only constant right now is Lewis Hamilton still at the front.
Race due to start at 15:32 their time, so you've got about 10 minutes. Take us with you, but make yourself a brew, get yourself ready, because this race is going to be epic when it restarts. Just looking at this, I just wonder, how much can you learn from the race start that you've already done? It was such a random, weird race start. Can you learn so much from that?
Well, everyone will know to be cautious, but here's, I think, the better question. What can the FIA learn? Will this be restarted from the standing start as that first start was, or it's in their power to say, actually, you know what, safety car restart, we're not going to risk that sort of accident happening again and another red flag in what are very tricky conditions. So we'll wait and see what the FIA decide first. If there is another standing start, I'm sure there's going to be many people very, very cautious, and you've got people so out of position that they're not going to want any risk. They just want to get around this first corner.
It's going to be a tough one, isn't it? The race will get underway at 15:32, so just over 10 minutes time. For those of you with us on 5 Live Sports Extra, we're going to be going back to the 100 cricket here, but the commentary will continue on BBC Radio 5 Live. We're not on there at the moment, so stay with us till 25 past, and then we'll make the switch. Or if you're listening on the BBC Sport website, well, we put the stream up for you. How about that? There's a start, but also we'll be there uninterrupted the whole time. The order again: Hamilton, Ocon, Vettel, Sainz, Tsunoda, Latifi, Alonso, Russell, Raikkonen, Schumacher, the top 10. Gasly, Ricciardo, Verstappen, Mazepin, Norris, the top 15. But Norris is, of course, out of the race. There's only 15 drivers left in the Grand Prix, with Giovinazzi, who will be in a net 15th place then at the end. Charles Leclerc was very frustrated to have been wiped out at the start of that race, wasn't he?
He was looking like he was going to come through for 2nd place with all the first incident ruling out everyone else that was ahead of him apart from Hamilton. Leclerc had his eyes on the exit of the corner, and then bam, the green Aston Martin coming from the grass and swiped into him. He then hit Daniel Ricciardo, who must have had a pretty good start as well, and there'll be some damage on that McLaren of Ricciardo. Certainly the right hand side of the floor looks to have taken a bit of a hit. What can they do to patch that up in this break? I will be amazed if Verstappen is able to run that Red Bull in any usable condition in this Grand Prix. Still a lot of work going on. There's mechanics, Red Bull mechanics, the whole way around his car, but Max is being strapped in, so it looks like he is going to take the restart, unlike Lando Norris, which is, I mean, the strength of that car is impressive, because the whack that Norris had into him was huge.
Well, we have got a few minutes till the racing gets back underway here on Sports Extra, and it was good to have a bad day yesterday, basically. Sainz crashed out of qualifying. Now he's up in 4th place. Yuki Tsunoda crashed out of practice, struggled in qualifying. He's now up into 5th place. And when you look at the drivers behind, I mean, Sainz has got a big shot at 2nd here, hasn't he?
Absolutely. The Ferrari's been quick this weekend. who could beat a Ferrari? A Mercedes and a Red Bull, obviously. There's only one ahead, and there's a Red Bull that's possibly going to be charging from behind, but in what hobbled state will Verstappen's car be? Who else can beat a Ferrari? Well, the other Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, out of the race. A McLaren of Lando Norris, out of the race. He is now probably the second fastest driver out there, starting fourth at the restart. Huge opportunity for him to get another podium with his new team for this year. But the same for all those guys up there. Esteban Ocon and the Alpine. Alpine are having a good weekend. They have both cars into the top 10 in qualifying yesterday. They're still both there in spite of all the action around them. Ocon's up to second. Fernando Alonso managed to avoid it all somehow as well and came through in seventh, sandwiched between the two Williams. Latifi ahead and Russell behind. But Alpine are set possibly for a huge haul of points. And then you've got Sebastian Vettel as well. A lot of experience. This is the sort of conditions that he can maybe produce something pretty good in that Aston Martin. His teammates out of the race, causing one of the big collisions. But Vettel, maybe a little bit like Turkey last year. He had a really good drive in his last season with Ferrari. Got on the podium. It's an opportunity, this, for Sebastian Vettel.
So, lap 3 of 70. The race due to get back underway in 7 minutes' time. Just looking at the side of, well, we're looking at the left-hand side of Verstappen's car, which isn't really that notable, but there's a lot of work going on at the back of the car. The thing is, how usable does Verstappen need his car to be? 13th at the moment, of course, but yeah, he's not going to win this Grand Prix. He's not going to catch up to Lewis Hamilton, almost no matter what state the car is in, if he's starting 13th at the restart. Surely even a bit of a broken Red Bull has got a shot at a podium still.
Depends how broken, doesn't it? It really depends how broken. It doesn't take a lot of damage to make a very quick car ordinary. We saw Lewis Hamilton had a bit of damage in the race in Austria, and he tumbled away behind his teammate, but then also was no match for Lando Norris and the McLaren, and he was quite lucky. He had such a big buffer to everyone else in the first half of the race. A bit of damage can make a big difference, and for Hamilton that was a little bit of curb damage that did that. Verstappen's had a McLaren whack into him at the start. It doesn't take too many of those aerodynamic pieces to be broken to make a Red Bull suddenly super ordinary. But of course, with 5 drivers out of the race, if he can beat the 2 Haas cars, which you'd say maybe he can still with a hobbled car, then he's fighting in 13th already, which is where he is now. What points can he get out of this? That's the question.
Rain stopped as well, so probably be an intermediate race start. And I wonder whether Massey will fancy just doing a safety car start here rather than have them all go round and line up on the grid again.
I think it'll be a safety car start, the same as we had at Imola, in conditions that it was slicks at Imola, but with one dry line and one wetter line. And race director Michael Massey opted for the safety car start. In theory, after a red flag, it should be a standing start, as we had again at Silverstone. But I think with the conditions as they are, and with the carnage we've already seen at the first corner, I think the easier option is certainly to have a safety car start, which will favour everyone who's got themselves into a decent position in the top 10, not least Lewis Hamilton from pole.
Yeah, absolutely. We're just getting a replay now on board with Nicholas Latifi. So he didn't get a great start, actually. Everybody's in front of him. He gets on the brakes fairly cautiously, and then suddenly everyone is in the runoff area, and he just overtakes his teammate George Russell and drives up into 6th position. That was remarkable on board with Latifi. That's the view you must have wanted to see so many times in your career.
He did nothing. Latifi did nothing. He drove down super cautiously. Was he plumb last into the first corner? I think it might have been after not a great start. Braked early, looked ahead, saw a few cars go off. There was a space to the inside, but it wasn't any sort of overtake for Latifi. Just cars off, more cars off, more cars off. He accelerates and he's in 6th. Look ahead, and there's the race leader.
So we are just, 3 minutes or so from the race getting back underway. As it stands, of course, Hamilton would move to the lead of the championship fairly comfortably, but we've got a long way to go in this Grand Prix. pretty much going to be a half-hour delay as well, isn't it? So, and with the track a bit wetter, the race may take a little longer also. Yuki Tsunoda running in 5th place, looking for his best Formula One result of his career. Currently, that is a 7th place finish in Baku.
Sun's peeking out.
Yeah, it's definitely stopped raining, hasn't it? And the track is still wet. It's still intermediates, but for how much longer? That's the question. Vettel's got a really good opportunity here in his sort of renaissance, maybe, after a difficult few years at Ferrari alongside Charles Leclerc, then a difficult start to the season. And in fact, Bahrain, everybody, well, many people had kind of written Vettel off, but since then he's put in some very strong performances. Yep, haven't missed anything, Kelly, but the race is about to restart in 50 seconds' time. It'll restart behind the safety car, and then the safety car will do a lap. They'll come in, and the race will get back underway, with Lewis Hamilton leading the Grand Prix, and then a very jumbled up order after a big crash at the first corner. Esteban Ocon in the Alpine is in 2nd place. Sebastian Vettel's Aston Martin is 3rd.
Definitely going to be drying quick.
Lewis Hamilton's saying the track is definitely going to be drying quickly. Carlos Sainz's Ferrari is 4th. Yuki Tsunoda's AlphaTauri is 5th. Nicholas Latifi in the Williams is up into 6th place, having made up 12 places in the chaos at the start. Fernando Alonso is 7th. George Russell is 8th. 9th is Kimi Raikkonen. 10th is Mick Schumacher. And then Gasly, Ricciardo, Verstappen, Mazepin and Giovinazzi are the 15 drivers. Verstappen got wiped out at turn 1. Bottas went into the back of Norris, who went into the side of Verstappen. Bottas and Norris are out of the Grand Prix. Verstappen has managed to keep going. Perez also got wiped out in that. He's out of the race, as is Charles Leclerc's Ferrari and Lance Stroll's Aston Martin. Alongside me is Jenny Gao, our F1 pit lane reporter, and Jolyon Palmer, the former F1 racer. And Hamilton's saying it's going to dry out quickly. It's looking very dry on the start-finish straight, but other parts of the track are a little bit more damp.
Everyone on the intermediate tyres as they were for the first start, but Hamilton is right, it's going to dry out quickly, and there are drier parts already forming on the track as they head out again down towards turn 1 behind the safety car. So I think it's only going to be a few laps before they're in for some slick tyres, but of course after a big crash it's the natural thing to do, to be the more cautious option, to run the intermediate, the sort of half wet tyres.
Jenny Gao, big damage on the side of Verstappen's car after that crash at turn 1.
Oh, absolutely huge damage to the car. The floor, the right-hand side of the car, the side pods. They've used a lot of tape. It's been a bit like a Blue Peter project down there. A lot of silver tape, just normal sticky tape as well. They've tried to clear up as much as you can. Any of those rough sides tend to take away time that you can have as well. So they've tried to clean it up as best they can, but it is certainly a bit of a damage limitation job down there for Verstappen at the moment in the Red Bull team.
This is going to be a standing start again. So the cars will come around, the safety car will peel into the pits, and the cars will line up on the grid like a normal race start. And it's so dry out there, Jolyon. This is good. We might see some gamblers at the end of this lap, surely.
I think there will be some gamblers. Verstappen could well be one, down in 13th. I think it can be slick tyres already. It's really quite dry, and it's only going to get drier now the sun's come out.
It's 27 degrees.
It's got to be slicks.
At this rate, everyone is going to box.
Everybody.
Understood.
So Russell's saying that everyone is going to pit at this rate. I don't know what will happen then if everybody comes into the pits. Mercedes are ready. Is everyone going to come into the pits and then no one will take the start of the Grand Prix? And what even happens then? We're about to find out. Hamilton through the final corner, and he stays out. Ocon pits from second place. Second place, Esteban Ocon comes into the pits. In the Alpine, he's gone for the gamble. Ferrari are getting ready in the pit lane as well. Vettel pits from third. Sainz pits from fourth. Everyone is pitting except Lewis Hamilton. Verstappen is coming into the pits as well. Lewis Hamilton is going to be the only driver to start this Grand Prix from the grid. This is the most bizarre thing that I think I've ever seen in the whole of my life. Lewis Hamilton is going to be the only driver starting this Grand Prix on the grid on wet weather tyres, on a perfectly bone dry track. Here comes the start of the race. It's only Hamilton on the grid. I cannot express how weird this is. Away goes Hamilton. Great start, I don't know. Bad start, I don't know. But he's leading the Grand Prix. He's on wet tyres. Everybody else now leaves the pit lane. Up into second place has gone George Russell in the Williams. Williams have got the best pit lane tyre change, and Russell is now second. He's going to lead this Grand Prix. Hamilton is in the lead of the race, but he'll have to pit at the end of this lap to put dry tyres on like the rest of the field. That's the most absurd thing I've ever seen. Julian can't stop laughing.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Why did Hamilton not pit though? From pole position, he's had a standing start all to himself because all the other 14 drivers pitted. So it's only Lewis Hamilton that's taken the start. He's driving round on the intermediate tyres. Everyone else is on slicks, and they're fine on the slicks. The slicks was obviously the right choice, but Hamilton didn't pit, so he's going to come out last, Jack.
Yeah, Hamilton's going to be last. Verstappen's going to be 12th.
Yeah, it's dry.
Yeah, copy Lewis, box.
Ocon has now taken the lead of the race, meanwhile, net lead. He's got ahead of George Russell. Russell has already dropped down the order. And has Russell got a problem? George Russell's slowing. George Russell has a problem in the Williams. And from looking like he might lead the Grand Prix, he's now got into all sorts of trouble and he's having to move out of the way. The car's shuddering around like he's got a gear shift problem or something like that. Hamilton through the final corner, pits, loses the lead of the Grand Prix. So that means Esteban Ocon in the Alpine takes the lead of the Hungarian Grand Prix. How far down the order is Hamilton going to emerge? He gets on the power now, heads towards the exit of the pit lane. He's going to be behind Max Verstappen, his teammate. He's going to be absolutely last. Ocon leads. Sebastian Vettel is second. Nicholas Latifi in the Williams is third. Yuki Tsunoda is fourth.
Okay, Esteban, you are leading the Grand Prix. Let's go.
Esteban Ocon's just been told he's leading the Grand Prix. This is absolutely... It's ridiculous. This is the most ridiculous race I've ever seen.
Heartbreak for George Russell, but he is going again now in seventh. So did he have to let a few cars pass because of something that happened in the pit lane?
Maybe.
Is that why? Did he jump people in the pit lane and he's had to let them through because now he's stabilised in seventh?
It might last.
Yeah, 8th and this. Yeah, the whole field pitted.
Hamilton is 14th. Max Verstappen is 11th. What a remainder of the Grand Prix we're in for. Esteban Ocon leads, Vettel second, Latifi third, Tsunoda fourth, Sainz fifth.
Hamilton was caught napping big time on that restart. George Russell called the strategy for the whole field. And they all basically did what he said it was obvious to do. But Lewis Hamilton, for some reason, didn't pit. Maybe from pole position, it feels a braver call to dive straight into the pits for slicks. But slicks were obviously the right tyre to be on, and Ocon saw it from second. Everyone else saw it from their great positions as well. But Hamilton didn't pit, and now he's last. Where can he come back to, though? His main rivals are out the picture, apart from Verstappen, who is still attacking now to try and get into the top 10.
Lap 6 of 70 in the Hungarian Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live. Esteban Ocon leads in the Alpine machine.
Ocon and Vettel are there laughing right now because they've got Nicholas Latifi in third still. This is not a circuit that's very easy to overtake on.
Oh, Mazepin's had a crash in the pit lane and he's broken his car. He's collided with the Alfa Romeo. Not sure which one it was, but they have had a collision coming into the pits and out of the pits. So Mazepin is now out of the race, and that will be investigated for whichever Alfa Romeo that was.
It'll be a penalty for whichever, for an unsafe release, quite clearly.
But what would have happened if Hamilton had pitted? No cars would have been on the grid when the lights came on.
Come on, guys. Get on it for the rest of the race, all right?
Yeah, Lewis, we're on it. So Verstappen still has damage. You're going to be the fastest man out there easily. We can still win this, bud.
We can still win this. Hamilton being told, Verstappen's got a load of damage. You've got the fastest car out there. We can still win this Grand Prix from 14th place. And they're not wrong.
Yeah, he really can still win. There's so much racing to go. 63 laps. We just ticked on to lap 7. The order. It wouldn't have been this jumbled up if you pulled it out of a hat right now. It's absolutely crazy. But Hamilton is on the back of the car ahead. It's Antonio Giovinazzi in the Alfa Romeo. He's got the fastest car by a long way here. He can still come through and win this Grand Prix. One person who's got to overtake on the way, though, is Max Verstappen, who is not particularly quick with a load of damage. But do you think Max will give him a lot of room?
Well, actually, Verstappen's struggling to get past Mick Schumacher and is more under pressure from Pierre Gasly behind. So Verstappen is struggling. Ocon leads 1.4 seconds ahead of Sebastian Vettel in the Aston Martin. Nicholas Latifi is third in the Williams. Yuki Tsunoda is fourth. Carlos Sainz is fifth. Fernando Alonso is sixth. George Russell, Jenny Gow, is seventh at the moment.
Yeah, we saw him in the net lead, didn't we, of the race, but actually he didn't have an issue with the car. He was just told that he had to give the places back after doing some overtakes in the pit lane. So what we thought was a great tactic to come out in net lead, unfortunately didn't work out, but he's only dropped back, as you say, to P7, so no problems with the car for Russell.
Yeah, and the FIA have said no investigation necessary for that Russell incident, presumably because he gave the places back, I would suggest.
Exactly, that must be how. Maybe he overtook them in the slow lane, and because Williams is the last garage.
Because he was behind Latifi, so how he came out ahead was baffling.
Yeah, so because Williams is the last garage, were the cars all stacked up, and Russell then was just at the front of the queue because that's where his garage was. That's probably, well, that's my best guess as to what's happened.
Or he's driven past all of them in the slow lane and gone
to get to his pit box.
Yeah, maybe. Lap 8 of 70, whatever the outcome, it is Ocon leading, Vettel second, Latifi third, Tsunoda fourth, Sainz fifth, Alonso, Russell, Raikkonen, Ricciardo and Mick Schumacher the rest of the top 10. Now Hamilton is almost on the back of Antonio Giovinazzi for 13th place. The Hungaroring, about 20 minutes outside of Budapest.
I can't even get close, guys.
It's a notoriously difficult circuit to overtake on as well. And we don't have the strategy element that we normally do. Because they've run the wet tyres, everybody is now out on the mediums. Everyone put the mediums on at the pit stop. You don't have to use, you can use whatever tyres you want once you've used the wet weather tyres. So they don't have to come in and put soft tyres on or hard tyres on. There's no rule. They could put on another set of mediums if they want at the halfway point in this Grand Prix. So it was Raikkonen who hit Nikita Mazepin in the pit lane. So Hamilton, it's notoriously difficult to overtake on this circuit anyway.
Yeah, one of the harder ones, but he's right up behind Giovinazzi now coming into the final corner. This is a good chance for him to pass one of the 13 he's got to do to win this race. Then he's only going to have a few cars between him and Verstappen, who's still stuck behind Schumacher. But Verstappen's got a run on the Haas right now. But as we ride on board with him, not close enough to make the move. Schumacher locks up into turn 1, but still Verstappen frustrated in 11th. Hamilton not able to pass Giovinazzi either right now.
Mick Schumacher yet to score any points in Formula One. The son of the 7-time world champion Michael Schumacher has been with the Haas team since the start of the year. The slowest team on the grid, so not a surprise he hasn't scored points, but now he's up in 10th place. Hamilton is going to try and go for it here on Antonio Giovinazzi, but up the hill into the quick left-hander of turn 4 is going to be a challenge. Hamilton's going to struggle to make progress throughout the field, isn't it? This is absolutely bizarre, this Grand Prix.
And all the while, it's plain sailing for Ocon and Vettel. They've got 8 seconds now, Ocon ahead of Nicholas Latifi, and he's lapping on that lap, actually, only 2/10 a lap quicker than Latifi, who did his personal best, but he has eked out a big gap very quickly to a Williams that qualified 18th. He's running 3rd. I mean, that's how shaken up this order is. But Ocon and Vettel, separated by a second and a half, they're running away with this out front. And if Hamilton can maybe pick off a few of these drivers, he might then have a huge gap to make up.
Go on. If you need to compromise my race, help Nicky do it. I will box early to avoid the undercut for anyone else. Prioritise Nicky.
That's George Russell in 7th place saying, look, he's 3rd, I'm 7th. If we need to, I'll do anything I can to help him. If you want to pit me early. And there goes Hamilton up the inside now of Antonio Giovinazzi into turn 1. Hamilton goes up into 13th place. I've just seen someone tweet an interesting theory that if Hamilton had pitted at the end of that formation lap, he would have been last anyway, because everyone would have followed him in. Mercedes are the first pit box, and he wouldn't have been allowed to leave his box until the whole field had gone past him, because otherwise it would have been an unsafe release. It's an interesting theory.
I don't think he would have been quite last, because they would have released him and then there would have been other people coming in, but certainly with Mercedes being the first pit box, yeah, he would have had to wait a long time. Kimi Raikkonen was released into traffic and hit Nikita Mazepin. Mazepin out of the race, Raikkonen under investigation, and he'll get a penalty. So yeah, he would have had to be held in the pit lane as the first pit box, and he would have lost a chunk of time anyway. But then what about others? Carlos Sainz, Ferrari,
yeah.
They're not right at the front of the pit lane. I'm thinking the other one is Red Bull, but Verstappen was so far down the order, it didn't really matter.
At lap 11 of 70, Jenny Gao.
Yeah, when we speak to the engineers before the races, they sometimes give us an idea of how fast you have to be to make an overtake on the car in front. Now, this is one of the hardest courses of the year to be able to overtake on track. You've got to be 2 seconds faster than the car in front of you just to be able to try and overtake. Then you've actually got to get it done. So this is not going to be an open and closed case for Hamilton, who's currently in 13th. He's got a lot of work to do, even though he's faster.
They call this Monaco without walls, and in Monaco, Lewis Hamilton spent a lot of the Grand Prix staring at the back of Pierre Gasly's AlphaTauri, and that's exactly where he is now, in 13th place. Gasly in 12th in the AlphaTauri, Verstappen still 11th behind Schumacher. That's sort of the positive news for Hamilton, is that Verstappen is not scoring any points at the moment either.
No, and Verstappen clearly doesn't have, he's got more pace than Schumacher ahead. He's attacking Schumacher but not able to make the move. But he's not got a huge amount of pace in the Red Bull car that is taped up on the right-hand side, and there are bits missing, aerodynamic parts. So Verstappen is I don't think he's going to charge through and have a recovery to a podium here. But he can stop Hamilton coming through. That's what Mercedes and Hamilton taking the start has basically meant, that he's got to overtake Max Verstappen on track, even though Verstappen was wiped out at the start and has a damaged car. And there's only Pierre Gasly in between the two of them, and they're both outside of the top 10 right now. The problem for Hamilton is that Gasly's within a second of Verstappen, so Gasly's going to get the DRS all the time. Giovinazzi had dropped behind Pierre Gasly, so Giovinazzi didn't have DRS, and they weren't in this DRS train, but now they are. It is difficult to overtake. One big opportunity into turn 1. If you can get close enough but not past there, maybe 2. But the rest of the 12 corners, no chance to overtake.
Right, who's going to win this Grand Prix then? Esteban Ocon leads, the Frenchman for the Alpine team that used to be Renault, that used to be Benetton before that, based in in Enstone in Oxfordshire. He is up ahead of the Aston Martin, the team that used to be Racing Point and Force India and Jordan before that. And those are the two fighting for the lead. One has never won a Grand Prix, Esteban Ocon. The other, Sebastian Vettel, is a 4-time world champion. They're separated by just 1.2 seconds for the lead and for the win. And they are 9 seconds ahead of Nicholas Latifi, because Latifi in the Williams is holding up Tsunoda, Sainz, Alonso, Russell, and the rest of the pack, basically.
So for the win now, it's Ocon v Vettel or Hamilton to come through. I think Pete Bonnington's not wrong when he says to Lewis Hamilton, you can still win. He's 24 seconds off the lead, which is Esteban Ocon in the Alpine. But if he can get clear air, if he can pass some of these cars, he can be so quick. And we've seen Mercedes be miles quicker. They can lap these guys in a normal race.
There's just no grip out here.
Hamilton saying there's just no grip out here.
What he desperately needs is everyone else to pit. He needs George Russell to pit early and sacrifice his own race to help Latifi or whatever, and trigger a load of pit stops in that midfield pack, because whilst they don't have to use both compounds of tyre, they're going to have to make a pit stop still. It's too long to do on a medium tyre.
Gasly fighting with Hamilton, covering the inside as they came down into turn 1. This is the move here for Hamilton, surely, round the outside of turn 2. If he has the extra grip compared to Gasly, he's going to look for it, Hamilton, but Gasly goes in pretty deep into the corner and holds the place for the moment. Hamilton's going to get the better run out through turn 3, but can't overtake up into turn 4. And Gasly, maybe, I don't know, not too aggressive against the rules, but I wonder if he's compromising his own Grand Prix by fighting quite so hard with Hamilton.
But he's looking ahead and seeing Verstappen stuck behind Mick Schumacher. So he's thinking that it's difficult to overtake, as Hamilton is thinking as well, and fight for all the places you can get, really. He's got to make sure he doesn't fight Hamilton too hard, which would mean he drops away from Verstappen and the DRS zone. But because there's a Haas just ahead, Verstappen's not able to unleash any more pace, and Gasly straight away is onto the back of the Red Bulls. So it's making Hamilton's life very difficult, and everyone's wised up to that old classic move around the outside of turn 2. That used to be, Daniel Ricciardo made it famous in Formula 1, didn't he, in 2014, with a couple of moves around the outside there. It's a brilliant move, but it relies on drivers ahead preparing turn 3 a little bit more, but now they're all wise to it. It's harder for Verstappen and Hamilton.
Here comes Hamilton again, and there goes Verstappen. So Verstappen making the move to the outside of Mick Schumacher. They go wheel to wheel, and Verstappen goes off the circuit to make that move, and I think intentionally comes off the throttle and lets Schumacher back through. And now Verstappen goes to the outside of turn 2. The legions of Dutch fans are on their feet, but they almost had their head in their hands because the two banged into each other. Verstappen has got away with it, but Schumacher and Verstappen coming together on the outside of turn 2. I think they've got away with it, and Hamilton locks up and is off the road. Hamilton locks up at turn 5 as he tries to get ahead of Gasly. The other thing to point out, Gasly is in an AlphaTauri, which of course is the Red Bull Junior team, so it goes with his employer's interests not to make life too easy there for Lewis Hamilton. But that was a close one with Verstappen and Schumacher.
Well, too close. They touched. Schumacher defending it harder, but he's in a points position for the first time in the Haas. Verstappen backed out because he had a big oversteer.
Not bad with half a car.
Not bad with half a car is the message. He nearly had a quarter of a car after that. He kind of, it was the front wing of Schumacher into the front left of Verstappen. Verstappen came over fairly aggressively, but he'll be lucky to not get away with a puncture there.
Yeah, it moved over aggressively to the left on the exit of turn 2 to prepare the right-hand kink of turn 3, and Schumacher still had his car there. So Verstappen moving across and catching the right-hand side of the Haas. So I think they've got away with it though, but it was a risky one. Gasly now on Schumacher. Looks like he's going to come through.
Gasly then up into 11th place on Schumacher. So Schumacher starting to drop back now a little bit, and that releases Verstappen, and it also releases, well, it will release Hamilton out of the sort of DRS train where everybody has the drag reduction system open, the flap in the rear wing that gives you extra straight line speed when you're within a second of the car in front. And that is good news for Hamilton ultimately, that Schumacher is getting shuffled backwards, even though Hamilton is still 13th. Antonio Giovinazzi is last, by the way, because he had a stop-and-go penalty for speeding in the pit lane, which presumably was when he came in to do his tyre gamble. Lap 16 of 70 in the Hungarian Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live. An absolutely absurd start to this race. Huge crash at the first start, wiping out Stroll, Leclerc, Bottas and Perez. Verstappen was caught up in it as well and then sent to the back of the field. That brought out a red flag, and on the restart, everybody came into the pits to change to dry tyres except for Lewis Hamilton, who was the only driver who took the start of the race, then had to pit a lap later, and as a result is down in last place. He's trying to fight his way back up the order. Kimi Raikkonen has just come into the pits. Lewis Hamilton now is going to overtake Mick Schumacher on the run down towards the first corner, and Hamilton now is up into 11th position. That has freed him up a little. He's not too far from the points-paying positions, and he's only 4 seconds behind Max Verstappen, who's in 9th place, and of course that is his main focus, let's say.
The leaders are close. Vettel just momentarily close to within 1 second of Esteban Ocon out front. Really long stop for Raikkonen. He was serving a 10-second penalty for an unsafe release, but then they did the pit stop, and then he was still held. So maybe a slow stop on top of a penalty for Kimi Raikkonen. He drops to the back. So 2 Alfa Romeos, 13th and 14th and last. Yeah, it's close at the front as well.
Yeah.
Ocon and Vettel. But let's not forget about them. This is for the race win at the moment. Lap 16 of 70, just about to end it. And Ocon's now getting his mirrors full of the Aston Martin. Latifi's hanging on, though, in 3rd. There's not a massive gap opening up. I thought it'd be bigger from these midfielders to what is usually pretty much a back marker, Nicholas Latifi in the Williams. You put him a little bit ahead of the Haas cars, but he's pretty solidly always 18th of the 20 runners.
Ocon and Vettel are lapping about 0.3 slower than their personal bests, which is sort of half a second quicker than Latifi's managing now on his personal bests. So how much are Ocon and Vettel playing a bit of a long game here? No need to... Hamilton sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix in his first lap in clear air. But is there a need for Ocon and Vettel to pull much more of a gap over Nicholas Latifi in third place?
No, maybe not. Maybe they're looking after the tyres. I think there's a various degree of tyre saving going on throughout the field as well. Fernando Alonso, for example, has dropped a long way behind Carlos Sainz, and there's no way that Alonso should be falling away from the Latifi train in third. It was a horribly slow stop for Raikkonen, left front. After waiting for 10 seconds, it didn't come off very cleanly. So Raikkonen, that's gone from bad to worse for him, that pit stop. But yeah, I think there's definitely tyre management in play right now as well. They don't have to pit. If the tyres can do the whole race, they can drive around and drive around. But presumably they can't do the whole race on a medium set. But the longer they can go, the more options they have.
Well, lap 18 of 70. Esteban Ocon leading the Grand Prix.
I don't really know what to say, guys. I can't get close to people.
Hamilton saying, don't know what to say. I can't get close to people. He's back behind Pierre Gasly, who he was following a little bit earlier on. It's nose to tail for the lead of the Grand Prix, though. Esteban Ocon and Sebastian Vettel, the blue Alpine against the green Aston Martin. They are sweeping through the right-hander of Turn 5 in this most bizarre of Hungarian Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live. Earlier on today, of course, at the Olympics, gold for Max Whitlock, and on the pommel horse, and Charlotte Worthington won the BMX Park Freestyle. 10 gold medals now for Team GB at Tokyo 2020, and the action will continue tomorrow morning, of course, and you can hear it all on 5 Live, especially with the Olympic breakfast, which is always a great way to wake up, isn't it, over the last couple of weeks. But in this strange Grand Prix, with myself, Jack Nicholls, former F1 driver Jolyon Palmer, and Jenny Gow with you. Jenny, fascinating race this one, bizarre race this one.
So bizarre. Trying to get my head around the strategy. We were expecting drivers to come in if they start on the medium tyres around lap 30. The maximum we reckon they can get out of a tyre on mediums is 40 laps. So it's going to be stretched. They're going to have to come in pit in at some point anyway and see what they flip onto. So fascinating to see what all of the garages are doing. They haven't prepared for this.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. I don't think they'll get to even though they don't have to pit again, I can't see them doing 70 laps on it, or 64 laps or whatever it'll be. 66 it would be, wouldn't it, on one set of tyres. I don't think is particularly doable. Here's Ocon, the race leader.
Yes, man, we're going for plan A plus 5. Plan A plus 5.
So plan A plus 5 is the message to Ocon. So whatever they were planning on doing before, but 5 laps later than that, pitting.
Yeah, so that's a pit stop at some point, but they're going to try and go further into the Grand Prix. Again, just whilst things are looking okay, they can do that. Things are only just looking okay for Esteban Ocon, though, because Vettel's swarming over the back of him with DRS on the main straight. Vettel's attacking Ocon pretty well, not quite close enough to make a move, but certainly he's a menace in the mirrors of the Alpine at the moment. And as soon as Vettel gets a chance to undercut, then Aston Martin can pit as well. So the strategies have got to be super fluid at the moment. Vettel can't undercut right now, or he'll come out right in the melee with the group that's all following Nicholas Latifi in third position. But as soon as they can, as soon as there's pit stops behind, this is a good scrap out front.
Esteban Ocon in his 5th season of Formula One, despite being only 24 years of age. Very talented coming up through the order. Was in the running really for a Mercedes Formula One seat. Was a Mercedes young driver, but decided to make the switch to Renault, or as it is now, Alpine. And Hamilton pits then. So Hamilton pits from 11th place. Interesting strategy. Is it going to be the hard tyre for Hamilton? It is indeed. So that'll give him some clear air, and presumably they'll try and run this hard tyre now to the end of the Grand Prix. Hamilton will be all by himself and basically try and undercut the whole field.
It's Monaco all over again for Mercedes and Hamilton. Stuck in traffic behind the same driver as well, Pierre Gasly, and they've gone early, so they can undercut Gasly now. 2.4 seconds the pit stop for Hamilton. Onto the hard tyres. If he can get his head down.
Everything you've got this lap, please, Max.
Everything you've got this lap, please, Max. So Red Bull are trying to cover off Hamilton here.
Yeah, Hamilton could get his head down and jump Gasly, but he's not going to jump Verstappen, who will be pitting this lap to cover off Hamilton, and then they can both go to the end of the race. So it's a move to gain 1 place, but if he can gain 2, it's Max Verstappen that he's going to be fighting with, and Verstappen now has got to give it full beans on this in-lap. His pace is actually all right, Max Verstappen, despite having what looked like a fairly mangled car. He's running okay with everyone ahead. They're not exactly blistering pace setters, up behind George Russell, really, in 7th place. But Verstappen now has got to peel into the right, as does Daniel Ricciardo. And where are they going to come out in relation to Lewis Hamilton?
Okay, so Ricciardo pits from 8th position, Verstappen pits from 9th position, and where are they going to be, as you say, Jolyon, compared to Lewis Hamilton? Verstappen now making his way down the pit lane.
Hamilton was 1.5 seconds quicker than Verstappen in the middle sector. It's going to be quite close.
It's a very, very quick pit stop for the Red Bull team. Just 2.3 seconds. They almost managed to jump Ricciardo, so Hamilton is going to come out behind Ricciardo and Verstappen, or ahead of Ricciardo and Verstappen. Here they come towards the pit lane exit. Hamilton is coming down the start-finish straight now, and I think he's actually going to go between both of them, is he? Hamilton onto the brakes, and immediately, aggressively, sweeps to the outside, and goes ahead of Verstappen, and goes ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. Big move that for Mercedes in the context of the Grand Prix. That is a net 8th position for Lewis Hamilton, and he's ahead of his title rival Max Verstappen.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. And unlike Monaco, this time it's worked wonders. Gasly didn't pit. Gasly didn't even bother defending it because he saw that one was gone. But the two ahead of him did, Ricciardo and Verstappen. But Hamilton has had that pace just bottled up in his Mercedes with nowhere to use it because he's been on the tail of Giovinazzi for a bit and then Pierre Gasly. In clear air, this is the car that took pole position, and he's just monstered his outlap. 2.5 in the middle sector, a chunk more in the final sector as well, as Verstappen was pitting. It wasn't even close with Verstappen. It was close with Ricciardo though, and Hamilton just swept around. He knew that was his chance. Overtaking cars on track is difficult, but when they've just come out of the pit lane, it's a little bit easier.
So Lewis Hamilton then, and George Russell pits now for Williams as well. So that was what he was talking about earlier. He's like, I'm happy to pit early if it helps Nicholas Latifi in 3rd.
This is Russell now covering off Ricciardo, Verstappen and Hamilton.
Hamilton sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. Vettel and Ocon were right together there, coming out of the chicane at turns 5 and 6. And
Just be patient, guys. Let's be. And box, Carlos, box. No, guys, they have a lot of pace. No.
Carlos Sainz being told to pit. Carlos Sainz saying, let's be patient. Let's not just follow all the other slow cars into the pits who are around us. Let's stay out on circuit, which is a wise move from Sainz because he's basically got the 2nd fastest car in the Grand Prix behind Hamilton, who's in 10th place. 9th place now because Russell has pitted. Where's Russell going to emerge?
He's behind Hamilton.
Yeah.
So Hamilton has made serious progress by pitting early this time.
But he's ahead of Ricciardo and Verstappen still, George Russell.
Yeah, he's just in that gap. But Hamilton is miles, he's 4 seconds ahead of Ricciardo now. He's absolutely flying in clear air. 2 seconds quicker than the race leader on the last lap. Everyone else now is going to have to pit. Yuki Tsunoda's coming in from 5th place in the AlphaTauri. Latifi is going to have to come in soon as well. That's going to unleash Carlos Sainz. And then Sainz can keep going. He didn't want to pit. He didn't want to try and gain 1 place. He wants to go and do his own thing, get some clear air. And I think it's a good call from Sainz. Even though we're seeing the undercut be huge, I think it's sensible stuff.
Okay, now push. Vamos.
Vamos, says the Spaniard.
And this is the overcut for Sainz now. Tsunoda was ahead of the Ferrari. He's pitted. Now it's Vamos time for the Spanish Ferrari driver, but he's still got Latifi there. He needs Latifi to pit as well. Latifi's 3rd, Sainz is 4th. Sainz just over a second away from Latifi in the Williams. Latifi's got to pit to cover off Tsunoda. Then Sainz will be released, and he's got to overcut not just Tsunoda, but Latifi as well.
Meanwhile, Esteban Ocon and Sebastian Vettel are dueling it out for the lead of the Grand Prix. Vettel is close enough to have DRS as they come down towards turn 1 this time, and Vettel is going to be close, trying to go for the lead into the first corner. I don't think he's quite going to be close enough, isn't he? Tucks in behind Esteban Ocon, and Ocon holds the lead for the moment. When are these two going to pit? They're in a bit of a game of chicken out in front, aren't they? Who wants to pit first? Latifi does pit now from 3rd position. That releases Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari into 3rd spot. spot. Where's Latifi going to emerge? So Ocon leads and has yet to stop. Vettel is second and has yet to stop. Sainz is third, has yet to stop. Alonso is fourth and has yet to stop. Pierre Gasly has now been to fifth place. He also hasn't stopped yet. Hamilton is now right on the back of Mick Schumacher. You might remember he passed him about 5 laps ago, and he's got to try and do it all over again here. Latifi emerges in 7th place behind Tsunoda. So that hasn't worked out for Nicholas Latifi. He's dropped behind Yuki Tsunoda, who's now sort of in a net 3rd place, but Sainz and Alonso and Gasly all still have to pit again. Very complicated race, this one. But Ocon is leading, just 1 second ahead of Sebastian Vettel. Hamilton is now in 8th position, probably a net 7th once Pierre Gasly pits, you would have thought. It depends whether he can get out ahead of Alonso when Alonso pits.
Easily ahead of Pierre Gasly. That was the first driver who was trying to undercut, remember. Yeah. That one's definitely in the bag. Then it's Latifi now on the track, is 4 seconds ahead. Latifi was 3rd before the pit stop. Williams maybe could have preempted that Tsunoda would pit, seeing the undercut and the filtering process of everyone else trying to protect it by pitting as well. Hamilton was basically at the back, pitted, and that just kick-started everyone else's pit stops further ahead. Latifi and Williams were a lap too late to cover off Tsunoda. Tsunoda just 1 lap earlier, but the undercut is big, and the Japanese driver for AlphaTauri is ahead of Latifi in the Williams, and that was for 3rd place, so it's quite important for Latifi. But now what about Sainz? What about Alonso? It's got good pace still, Fernando Alonso. He's been saving his tyres. I noticed earlier he wasn't very close to the car ahead of him. I think it was George Russell before Russell pitted, just saving those tyres, and now we'll see what he can do.
Lap 25 of 70 in the Hungarian Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live. It is Esteban Ocon leading this race, just ahead of Sebastian Vettel. Oh, lock up from Verstappen. He's running in 12th position after picking up big damage at the start of the Grand Prix in a first corner crash where Bottas hit Norris, who hit Verstappen. That wiped most of them out of the Grand Prix, but Verstappen managed to keep going despite the damage to the car, but he's struggling to make much progress. He's in 12th position outside of the points paying positions at the moment. Hamilton is 8th, which as it stands wouldn't be enough to move him into the lead of the championship, but still not even at half race distance. Ocon leads, Vettel 2nd. Then you've got the 2 men from Madrid, Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari and Fernando Alonso in the Alpine in 3rd and 4th position. And, well, I'll correct myself, Alonso's from Oviedo. They're both Real Madrid fans, if that helps. And Verstappen had quite a big lock-up on those hard tyres when he's running in 12th position. Still got some pit stops to shake out, but Hamilton at the moment in 8th place.
Frustration for Verstappen now. He's seen Hamilton come from behind. They were given a glimmer of hope, Red Bull, by Hamilton not pitting on that restart. Suddenly they got track position from 13th against the race leader. You said under red flag that he had no chance, but he did have a chance because of a mistake from Hamilton. But the undercut has just transformed this race, and suddenly Verstappen's frustrations, he's on his own now. Before he at least had Hamilton behind, and it could have been no points for either of them. But now Hamilton is in a points position. He's on the back of Nicholas Latifi in the Williams now for 7th. Should be easy peasy for him. We still got Gasly to pit, that'll be 6th for Hamilton, and anything else now is a bonus, but we're not even at half distance. He's in a car that he could be a 1.5 seconds quicker than Ocon and Vettel as soon as he gets clear air. Hamilton is not out of contention of winning this race.
It's Jolyon Palmer, the former Renault F1 driver, alongside me, Jack Nicholls, and Jenny Gow.
Yeah, Nicholas Latifi and the Williams in 7th place being told to push, just listening across to his radio. Lewis Hamilton is the man behind him. He's got fastest lap at the moment and is pushing. But Latifi not in a position in that Williams where he's used to actually having to defend against Hamilton and pressurise others. This, probably one of the first times in his F1 career he's had to do that. Normally you get a blue flag waved at you, you get out in the way of the leading car and then you carry on your race. But very different times for Nicholas Latifi.
Can't imagine he's going to make it too hard for Hamilton. I don't think he's going to have the chance to make it too hard as they come through the final corner. Hamilton 4 tenths away. He'll get DRS and he should have a nice run to pass the Williams driver. It's going to be easy for him, I think.
Hamilton down towards turn 1, tucks in behind the Canadian, pulls to the inside and sweeps past into 7th place now, Lewis Hamilton. The next target is going to be Yuki Tsunoda, who is a couple of seconds up the road. Then it's Pierre Gasly in 5th, who's yet to stop, Alonso in 4th, who's yet to stop, Sainz in 3rd, who's yet to stop, and the 2 race leaders, Ocon and Vettel, still yet to make a pit stop out in front. Ocon ahead, Sebastian Vettel 2nd, both setting personal best laps of the race that last time around.
But we've got to keep an eye on Carlos Sainz. He's overcut Latifi, and he's overcut Tsunoda. He's got more pace than both of them, in spite of the fact he hasn't got new tyres on the car. Stayed out on his mediums, and he's also was a second a lap quicker than the two race leaders until he just had a slightly slower lap on the last time. We'll see as he comes through the final corner what it is this time. 1 minute 22.8 for Ocon, 2/10 quicker than Vettel, who's on a 23.0. And again, Sainz is nearly a second quicker than Vettel. So Sainz is hauling himself up to those top two. And he's in a Ferrari that is quick. So Sainz is not out of contention for this win yet.
Absolutely not. Lap 28 of 70 in one of the most bizarre Grand Prix in recent years, especially in the early stages. A big crash at the start, and then at the restart, everybody came into the pits to change from wet to dry tyres other than Lewis Hamilton. So he took the race start all by himself on the wet tyres, then had to pit the lap later and dropped to last place. He's now climbed up the order to 7th position, closing in on Yuki Tsunoda. He's 20 seconds now behind Fernando Alonso in 4th position. So he's getting into the window where if Alonso pits, Hamilton will be ahead of him as well. So if Hamilton gets ahead of Tsunoda, he's in a net 4th place.
Yeah, Carlos Sainz is going to be the problem for Hamilton, because he's finding it not hard to pass Latifi, easy. Mick Schumacher, easy. Tsunoda should be easy. Tsunoda qualified 16th. Coming up to a Ferrari or Fernando Alonso would be a very different kettle of fish. Then you're talking about a midfielder, but a two-time world champion, very good wheel-to-wheel racer, or Carlos Sainz in a Ferrari that's very quick around this circuit. Sainz qualified 15th because he crashed yesterday, but his pace was really good, and he could have qualified up in the top 5.
Are we on lap 43 already?
That's the laps remaining, Lewis. Laps remaining.
Okay, so Hamilton has just had the absolute shock of his life when he's seen his pit board, presumably, that says lap 43, and he thinks that we've only got, what, 15 to go, but in, 25 to go, but actually it's about the same, really, isn't it? But we're on lap 29 now, as it is, not even at half race distance, as opposed to 15 laps past half race distance. So that's sometimes, I presume some races go quicker than others.
Yeah, none have gone that quick for me, when you're past half distance before you even really know what's happening. But yeah, sometimes you drive, you think you've been in the car for ages, and you see that
The sky is getting black. Nothing on the radar at the moment.
Nothing on the radar in terms of rain is the message to Fernando Alonso.
Could it get more dramatic? I think I have to take it.
What was the longest race of your career?
Any Singapore Grand Prix. Street circuit.
But they are literally long races. They're like 2 hours anyway, and they feel it.
Oh, they feel like they're just 24-hour race. Le Mans in Formula One. It's so humid, it's bumpy, it's a really long lap, and they are two-hour-long races because the average speed is so low. I can't think of one off the top of my head that just felt like it went on and on.
Surely that Singapore, your best race result, felt a long one.
Any Singapore race feels long, but that one did. But I was also trying to chase down the car ahead, so it wasn't just clinging onto my fingernails for a good result.
No, I never said it was.
That's what you're implying.
No, it wasn't at all. Don't be so defensive. Lap 30 of 70. Hamilton is now right behind Yuki Tsunoda in the fight for 6th position. Not close enough this time to make a move on the Japanese driver in his rookie season of Formula One. Had ups and downs this year, but currently running in 5th place, which is a decent effort, albeit after qualifying poorly, which has kind of helped him out there. Ultimately, after the carnage at the start, lap 30 of 70, Verstappen is only 8/10 behind Daniel Ricciardo in the McLaren, but he's struggling to make any progress. Verstappen still down in 12th, still out of the points-paying positions.
That's where he was when they pitted on the same lap, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Verstappen and Red Bull are in trouble here with Hamilton scything through the field. He's on the back of Tsunoda and he's putting him under big pressure on this lap. Should have a chance with some DRS at the end of it to overtake into turn 1.
Ocon has extended his lead at the front, 2 seconds now ahead of Sebastian Vettel. Vettel was within a second at one point and putting some real pressure on, but Ocon has settled down a little. They're both 3/10 or so slower than their best lap times of the Grand Prix, so as a result, it looks as though they are settling down at the moment a little, or trying to manage those tyres a little bit more.
It's important for Ocon to just extend that gap now, because we are right into a pit stop phase. And Pierre Gasly pits finally from 5th place. So Tsunoda goes through and Hamilton goes through, up into 6th for Lewis Hamilton. He's on the back of Tsunoda as well, down towards turn 1. Don't think he made it past on that lap. No, he didn't. Just still behind into turn 2. He's getting frustrated now behind Yuki. Alonso's having a good drive. Alonso's going with Sainz. So Alpine have got some pace.
Sound you can hear is Lewis Hamilton coming through the left-hander of turn 4 at the top of the hill. Approaching half race distance in this Hungarian Grand Prix. Esteban Ocon leading, 2.2 seconds clear of Sebastian Vettel. Then it's 10 seconds back now to Carlos Sainz, who's continuing to close that gap by half a second or so a lap. And he was 14 seconds, I think, off the pair of them previously. Now he's just 11 seconds away. And now there's a big queue still behind Mick Schumacher in 9th position. It's Schumacher, Russell, Ricciardo and Verstappen, all of them unable to get past Schumacher, who's holding on in 9th place in the Haas. He has yet to make a pit stop, though, I think. So that means that he's going to drop way down to the back of the field, and then that will release everybody, but it'll only release Verstappen up into 11th spot. So this 6th place here for Lewis Hamilton as it stands would give him 8 points, which would bring he and Verstappen level on points at the top of the championship. Verstappen's won more Grand Prix, so he would still lead the championship on countback, but they would be level on points if it finishes like this. Hamilton, though, quite conceivably, is able to get 2 more positions at least in this Grand Prix.
Alonso's still out there and is lapping quicker than Tsunoda. So Alonso, with every lap that's going by, is getting a pit stop window for him to come out and get ahead of Tsunoda, and then Hamilton. But Hamilton's got a chance to pass Tsunoda here.
To the inside, to the outside, coming up into turn 4, sweeps into the apex and makes the move for 5th place. That was brave stuff from Hamilton, gets the job done. He's now into 5th position and will try and close in on Fernando Alonso in 4th place. As you say, Alonso is kind of coming with Carlos Sainz to the back of the 2 leaders, Ocon and Vettel, and now Russell has an opportunity to try and get ahead of Mick Schumacher, but he's not close enough coming up the hill into turn 4. So Hamilton now up into 5th place, Ocon leads, Vettel 2nd, Sainz pits. Sainz pits from 3rd in the Ferrari.
He has to now cover off Hamilton, who's got a load of clear air now, 21 seconds up to Alonso. Alpine didn't pit Alonso. I don't think he had enough of a margin to come out ahead of Lewis Hamilton, so he's still in a race against Yuki Tsunoda pretty much, and that's going to mean Hamilton's up to a net 4th. Sainz pits and will emerge ahead of Lewis Hamilton still. And now that's going to also filter the pit stops of the race leaders. Ocon and Vettel, they've now got to respond. Sainz was closing in. They've probably got a lap or 2 before he's in undercut territory.
He was 12 seconds off, wasn't he?
I think 10 or 11 in the end. So they got a couple of laps, but we've seen the undercut be super powerful. Hamilton was a long way away from Daniel Ricciardo he undercut. 3 cars in 1 lap. Sainz has got pace in the Ferrari. With new tyres particularly, he could take big chunks.
Lap 33 of 70 in the Hungarian Grand Prix. Ocon and Vettel, the 2 race leaders. Esteban Ocon, the Frenchman for the Alpine team. Sebastian Vettel, the 4-time champion. And Schumacher is going side by side with George Russell. Russell in the Williams goes all the way around the outside at turn 2. And Schumacher gives him space and Russell makes the move. Very well done there from George Russell to get up into 9th position now. Can Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen follow through on the Haas that still has to make a pit stop? Ocon leading, Vettel 2nd, they stayed out.
Should be easy for Ricciardo. He's going to make it the chicane, is he? No, has a little nose to the inside, but waits then for the start-finish straight again. Schumacher's just dropping, hasn't pitted on a medium tyre still, and I think they're just chancing their arm, hoping for a safety car maybe, or maybe somehow the tyre can survive the whole race. But he's going to tumble out of the top 10. So it's going to be Ricciardo into 10th and Verstappen to 11th, but Max is still stuck behind the McLaren that he pitted and came out right behind.
Here's a fact for you from Motorsport Stats. Ocon has now led more laps than both Perez and Bottas in 2021, just in the course of this Grand Prix. Lap 34 of 70. So basically half race distance. It's Ocon leading, Sebastian Vettel in 2nd, Fernando Alonso in 3rd. Those 3 have yet to pit. Carlos Sainz in 4th, has pitted. Hamilton in 5th is just 2 seconds now back from Carlos Sainz. There's the move from Daniel Ricciardo to the inside of Mick Schumacher. Fair play to Schumacher, tries to hang on around the outside, but Ricciardo will have the DRS on the run towards turn 2. So Ricciardo is now into 10th place. Verstappen tries to follow through immediately to the outside of Mick Schumacher coming through turn 2 and gets past. So Verstappen now up into 11th position, still 1 place outside of the points-paying positions. Hamilton is just 2 seconds behind Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari.
What's our target finish?
So we're fighting for a podium, Lewis. It's going to be hard. I know you can do it.
Is that the guy ahead's last stop or what?
Copy, we think so.
So Hamilton being told, Sainz in front of you, that was his one and only pit stop in this Grand Prix, and you're fighting with him for a podium, basically.
But Sainz isn't that far away from a win. Yeah, that's the thing here. Ocon and Vettel still not pitting. They're all going to be sort of converging towards the front. Alonso's not pitting either in 3rd. He's going to have some fresh tyres to have a bit of pace at the end of the race as well. Sainz is not going to be far away from the race leaders when they finally pit. And then Hamilton's right with Sainz. So they're going to be 4 for the race lead soon.
Only 14 drivers still running, Jenny. Nikita Mazepin, Lando Norris, Sergio Perez, Valtteri Bottas, Lance Stroll and Charles Leclerc all out of the Grand Prix.
Yeah, and quite a lot of them being quite vocal to the media in what happened with that first lap, first turn crash. Charles Leclerc saying it's not easy on a wet track, but we are F1 drivers. We need to be prepared. I can't do anything about what happened. A lot of points are lost. I was confident for today's race. We had a good weekend so far. I'm gutted. His voice as well echoing that of Lando Norris, who thinks there was a penalty that should be awarded to Bottas. And bearing in mind the soft penalties that Norris has had in his year this year, he thinks it should be a pretty hard penalty for Bottas.
Yeah, I think most likely you would predict a grid drop for the next Grand Prix at Spa, which will not be ideal for Bottas or Mercedes, but we'll have to wait and see for official confirmation. Now, lap 36 of 70, and Ocon is leading the Grand Prix still. The Frenchman ahead of the German Sebastian Vettel, 2.3 seconds between them at the moment. Then it's 12 seconds back to Fernando Alonso in the Alpine. So an Alpine 1 and 3 as it stands, but Alonso is still to pit. And they're only... well, he's 15 seconds clear of Carlos Sainz and Lewis Hamilton. So that last lap, Sainz was a second quicker than Ocon and Vettel. The other tough thing for Hamilton is that Sainz's tyres are going to be 13 laps fresher than Lewis Hamilton's.
But his car is slower. So that's the balance now. At what point? The same now Sainz is going to have with Ocon and Vettel. Fresher tyres, but against... fresher tyres for Ocon and Vettel, but against faster cars behind. It's going to sort of even itself out. But Sainz isn't making enough of this on his outlap in the first flying lap. It's not bad, but still only 1 second to Vettel, who pits. Oh, slow into the pit lane from Vettel.
He was really sort of wobbly when we cut to him. In he comes now. Off go the medium tyres, on go the hard tyres. Oh, it's a slowish stop. 3.3 seconds, loses a second or so. But where is Vettel going to come out with regards to Carlos Sainz? Should be comfortably ahead. Sainz is coming around the final corner now. Hamilton is almost within a second of Carlos Sainz, actually, as they come down the start-finish straight. And Vettel emerges about 6 seconds in front of Sainz and Hamilton. Hamilton very close.
Yeah, no risks there from Aston Martin pitting that early, but they were trying to undercut Ocon for the race lead, don't forget. So Sainz is 5.5 seconds behind Vettel, even though Vettel looked like he was maybe caught anti-stall, locked up on the way into the pits, and then had a slow release. Ocon now has got to fly, and he's doing a personal best on this lap, which will surely be an in-lap to cover off Vettel.
Maximum push is what he was told, Jenny.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is pressure moment for both Aston Martin and Alpine. Remember, they're not teams that are traditionally used to pit stopping out of the lead of races. 21 seconds is the average to come in, stop your car, change over the tyres. That's what Alpine are about to do. 4 new hard tyres come out. How will this pit stop go? Can Ocon come back in the lead?
Comes into the pit lane now. Medium tyres are going to be swapped for hard tyres. Vettel is coming into the final corner. Is it going to be a neat and tidy pit stop for the Alpine crew? On go the hard tyres. It is very, very sweet. 2.3 seconds, a second quicker than Sebastian Vettel's pit stop. Vettel has been quick on his outlap. down towards turn 1, and Ocon holds the net lead of the Grand Prix, but only just.
Outlap critical.
Outlap is critical, and Vettel is coming right at Esteban Ocon as they come through the right-hander of turn 1. He's just a little too far away, Sebastian Vettel. Without that slow pit stop, I think he's in the lead of this Grand Prix, but it isn't to be. Ocon still in the net lead, Vettel second. It's actually Fernando Alonso now who is up into first place, but Vettel has got the bit between his teeth. He's right behind Ocon, coming up towards turn 4, not able to make a move.
So close, so much pressure on these guys as well. They're fighting for a win. Not in their wildest dreams could they have thought of that this morning, but suddenly these midfielders with huge pressure on their shoulders, knowing that they can win a Grand Prix. For Esteban Ocon, he's had a podium last year, but out of nowhere he's got a chance to be a race winner, and he's holding off, don't forget, a 4-time world champion in Sebastian Vettel, who's got a one-off chance at a win here, but he's won so many Grand Prix and he knows how to do it from years gone by. Ocon though, Alpine, beautiful pit stop from the Alpine mechanics under so much pressure. 2.3 seconds. Any slower and he might have lost that.
His tires are struggling, man.
53 wins for Sebastian Vettel in his career, looking for a 54th. Ocon looking for his first, and Vettel is really fighting with the car as he come out of the final corner. Now Hamilton's saying these tyres are struggling. He did pit a lot earlier than Carlos Sainz. Is it going to be too far, too much for Hamilton to get to these tyres to the end of the Grand Prix?
I think he's got a free pit stop to
12 seconds to Tsunoda.
Oh, no, he hasn't, no. So he's got, 13 seconds to Tsunoda, then he's got a bigger gap to maybe pit. So he loses a place to Tsunoda possibly, and then in a few laps.
Not much left on the tyres, I guess. Yep, cover that. Not long now, not long.
He is also going a second lap quicker than Tsunoda, so within 7 laps, let's say, he could have a free pit stop. That was Fernando Alonso saying not much left on the tyres, but he's been on these medium tyres for 39 laps now, Alonso.
Yeah, I think they can let Tsunoda go maybe, but pit and come out ahead of Latifi in a handful of laps' time. So that will be a chance for Hamilton to switch on to effectively a 2-stop in this race, and then have fresher tyres to once again pass Tsunoda and go and chase down Carlos Sainz. Sainz 6 seconds away from Sebastian Vettel. So the Ferrari may be now happy with the podium. Remember, he was 5th earlier on.
Into the pits comes Fernando Alonso then, the last driver to make a pit stop. The Alpine driver makes his way in, the 2-time world champion all the way back in 2005 and 2006. With this team, in fact, before he's then subsequently been to Ferrari, to McLaren, left Formula One, come back to McLaren, and he's going to emerge in a net 5th place, I think. He's going to come out in front of Yuki Tsunoda, isn't he? Yes, so Alonso in 5th position. So the race order is Esteban Ocon leading, less than a second ahead of Sebastian Vettel. Carlos Sainz is 3rd, 7 seconds back. Then it is Hamilton right behind Sainz. Alonso is 5th, Tsunoda is 6th, Latifi is 7th, 8th is Gasly, 9th is Russell, 10th is Ricciardo.
Okay, Max, what's the balance limitation at the moment, please, mate?
There's no limitation, it's just broken. There's on the service here.
Copy.
Gasly has just cut past Nicholas Latifi coming down into turn 1, so Gasly is now up into 7th place. Verstappen out of the points at the moment, so Hamilton's 4th place finish would move him into the lead of the championship by 4 points. Going into the summer break, it will be 5 points actually, because he's got the fastest lap as it stands. Verstappen being asked, you know, what's the issue with the car? Have you got understeer, oversteer? He says the car's just broken. There's no problem. It's just broken.
Great job, yeah.
And that's Pierre Gasly celebrating, getting past Latifi and up into 7th place.
Beautiful move from Gasly on the brakes from a couple of car lengths back, but just sent it down the inside. No lock-up, really nicely measured. He's on fresher tyres than Latifi. He was one of the latest to pit of that pack, and now he's on fresher tyres, trying to chase his teammate Yuki Tsunoda down. And in all of this, it's bad news for Hamilton, because that free pit stop, or relatively free pit stop I was talking about, I was forgetting Fernando Alonso's now pitted and rejoined within a pit window of Hamilton as well, and he doesn't want to lose track position to Fernando Alonso on some decent tyres either. So at the moment, it's looking like his options are fairly limited to just try and pass Carlos Sainz on track. Just 1.2 seconds between them, but the Ferrari, not a bad car at all.
Jenny Gao.
Yeah, you're talking about Verstappen. He's got so much damage to that Red Bull car after that lap 1 incident. Yes, they came in under red flag conditions and managed to take most of it up, but it's worth saying he is missing the entire right-hand barge board in addition to the floor that he's missing as well. And what other damage there is on that car, who knows? I think he's just come into the pit lane, actually, and done another stop onto the medium tyres, lap 41. And just worth bearing in mind, Alonso, nice symmetry there, celebrated his 40th birthday this week and came in on lap 40 to his pit stop.
Do you think that's why they did it? No?
I'm surprised they didn't do a little party for him at the same time. Should have done it with party hats on.
5th place then for Fernando Alonso. Now, battle on for the lead again. Sebastian Vettel sends it in very deep into turn 1, but too far back from Esteban Ocon to make a move, and that's actually dropped him back quite a bit now. Fernando Alonso has just set the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, and Vettel, from being within a second, has now dropped back to 1.2 seconds back, 1.3 seconds back from Esteban Ocon, because got a bit overexcited at the first corner there.
Piling on the pressure, though. How much can Ocon take of this pressure from Vettel? No overtaking opportunities yet, really, for Vettel, but that Aston Martin is in the mirrors of Ocon out front, and Vettel just in too hot that time. Bit of a lock-up and couldn't make it stick, but it's all just making Ocon look in the mirrors and think twice about this race. He's not got it under control just yet. He hasn't put a foot wrong. He's in the best position, but he's got Sebastian Vettel, who has a quicker car, trying to pass him.
So we are on lap 42 of 70 in the Hungarian Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live. So we're past half race distance. Lewis Hamilton is in 4th place, just 1.2 seconds back from Carlos Sainz. So still piling on the pressure here, Lewis Hamilton, on the back of the Ferrari. Now, are they both closing in on that last lap? Well, they were a second quicker than Vettel, 0.6 quicker than Esteban Ocon. So they are still closing that gap. It's now just down to 4.7 seconds from Sainz to Vettel and Ocon, who are fighting for the lead. Hamilton saying his rear tyres are shot. I don't think he used that exact word because they had to star it out on the images we've just seen. But Hamilton saying the rear tyres are gone. But Sainz is going to be close to the back of the leaders before too long.
Yeah, Hamilton's only 7 seconds off the race lead right now, and his pace is quicker, even though he's running in dirty air. So he needs fresher tyres. He's saying the tyres are gone because he's sliding behind the Ferrari in the dirty air. He's not able to get close enough to get within the second and get DRS, but he is so close to it, just 1.01 seconds away, just 100th from being within DRS, and then the pressure will be mounting on Carlos Sainz, who a podium for Sainz is important. He's closing in on the race lead as well. He was a second a lap quicker than Vettel on the last lap. Vettel, who ran a bit wide at turn 1, but still 0.6 up on Ocon. He is closing in on those race leaders. You can see them coming towards him. But a podium is still a great result for Carlos Sainz and Ferrari when McLaren are barely scoring, Norris out and Ricciardo in 10th.
And considering Sainz started 15th on the grid, Jenny.
Yeah, McLaren came into this race wanting to defend their 3rd spot in the championship standings going into this summer break of 3 weeks. They're 15 points ahead of Ferrari as things stood going into this race, but obviously that isn't going to be the same once this race is done and dusted. And the difference in price point, if you finish 3rd or 4th in the championship, a difference of as much as $6 million. There's so much at stake for these teams.
Yeah, really important to get points on the board, isn't it? Lap 44 of 70, Hamilton less than a second away from Carlos Sainz again, just 0.6 of a second behind him as they come up the hill in towards turn 4, but no overtaking opportunity there. It's going to be tough this for Hamilton to get past the Ferrari in front. The order is Ocon, Vettel, Sainz, Hamilton, Alonso, the top 5. Tsunoda, Gasly, Latifi, Russell, Ricciardo, the top 10. Raikkonen's got ahead of Max Verstappen. That's because Verstappen made another pit stop, didn't he? And then Schumacher 13th, Giovinazzi 14th.
Yeah, I have the feeling Hamilton is going to box again.
Watch for Hamilton behind, copy that, and he will box behind Alonso, so we should be safe to stay there at the end.
So Sainz basically saying, I think Hamilton's going to pit again. So we're quite relaxed, and the team's saying if he does, he'll come out behind Fernando Alonso, so we're all right.
Well, I think Sainz saying that to make the Ferrari wary of the undercut, basically. Do they want to pit again?
Tyres got a second wind.
That's great to hear.
Tyres have got a second wind, says Lewis Hamilton. So they were bad, now they're all right. But he's locking up into turn 1, doesn't lose too much time through it, but 13 laps, the different in age of tyres. Sainz has been on his for 12 laps so far. Hamilton's been on his tyres for 25, and we've still got basically 25 still to go.
That's not a huge amount of laps on a hard tyre around this circuit, though. 25 laps. In a normal dry race, you'd expect them to do sort of 40 plus. And so Hamilton there shouldn't be running out of tyres just yet. Of course, he has been hammering on them to make all those places with an undercut or some overtakes. And now he's locking up right front into turn 1. He had a big oversteer coming out of turn 12. He's really putting a lot of energy through the tyres to put pressure on Sainz and get through. And he can probably see the race lead as well. 6.7 seconds, the gap from Hamilton to Ocon, with Sainz first and then Vettel in his way. They can pit again at some point, but Sainz's engineer is right. He will lose track position to Fernando Alonso. He has now pretty much got a clear window to pit and come ahead of Tsunoda, though. So I can see Mercedes pitting Hamilton at some point and going for a bit of a charge. That 46 of 70. Esteban Ocon leading the Hungarian Grand Prix. 1.1 seconds ahead of Sebastian Vettel. Carlos Sainz is third. Hamilton trying to chase him down. Fernando Alonso is in fifth place. He's taken the fastest lap point at the moment away from Lewis Hamilton, which means that Hamilton's lead at the top of the championship would be 4 points if it finishes like this, because his main rival Max Verstappen is down in 12th place. Former Renault F1 driver Jolyon Palmer with you, well, with me as well, with everybody here. Myself, Jack Nicholls, and he's also with Jenny Gao.
It certainly is. We're a great team, united. Just to talk a little bit about Hamilton, I mean, he's a master of this sort of tyre talk when it comes to the radio. He knows everything is being listened to. OK, it's not being listened to directly by Sainz, but things are being relayed back. And I just wonder if this is typical Hamilton's mind games. He's racing Sainz. It's not a usual race for him to be in. So maybe he's just laying on a bit thick with the tyres. Then he says there's a second wind. Is he just trying to outfox the whole of the Ferrari team and Sainz now?
I think he's mainly focused on his own race and trying to get... Yeah. Thing is, how do you know what's code to outfox someone and what's a genuine thought to your race engineers? To try and discern the difference between them is impossible for Pete Bonington. You need like a code word for... If I say Bono at the end of it, that means it's a fake news.
It's like Simon Says. Like, exactly. If you say Simon, if Simon Says at the beginning, then you have to do it. If you don't say it, then you don't do it.
Exactly. But I think Hamilton can have another window, and with the way they're closing up Sainz to Vettel and Ocon as well, Sainz is only 4 seconds away from Sebastian Vettel. Hamilton has a chance to make another pit stop. He will jump Sainz if Sainz pits again, so Sainz cannot afford to pit again. I think Hamilton can pit in the next lap or two, come out ahead of Tsunoda. He'll lose track position to Alonso, but on a fresh tyre, 23 laps to go, I think he can do some serious damage in his Mercedes, as he's already done, to leap from 13th up to 4th, remember.
But can he pass Alonso and Sainz? It's so difficult to overtake it. We've seen it so many times. Ricciardo, Raikkonen and Verstappen all still queued up behind George Russell.
But he's nearly overtaking Sainz on 13-lap older tyres. Give him a tyre advantage, and he's got a chance, I think.
Well, following us here on 5 Live Sport, we'll be heading to Henry Moran and live coverage of today's 100 cricket matches. And then the live sport continues about 1 o'clock this morning on Dotton's Up All Night. We'll be starting with the Olympic coverage from tomorrow. And Hamilton does pit now, as Jolyon Palmer predicts. And so that'll be a set of medium tyres, I would presume, and then he will go aggressive for the final 22, 23 laps of this Grand Prix. It is a new set of medium tyres. Hamilton comes in. It's a neat and tidy pit stop for the Mercedes crew, 2.3 seconds. Verstappen's second pit stop, by the way, was 1.8 seconds. It was an absolute joke how fast it was. Remarkable stuff. But that's a neat enough stop for Hamilton. Now he drops to 5th. Ocon leads, Vettel second, Sainz third, Alonso fourth, but Hamilton 5th, and he'll be on the charge.
Alonso's also on the charge. Alonso's catching Carlos Sainz and was catching Lewis Hamilton before he pitted. Hamilton does that pit stop then, and he comes out ahead of Yuki Tsunoda. So he's lost 1 place to Fernando Alonso, but on a new medium set. He's going to be taking fastest lap anytime in the next lap or two, and then he's going to go head down. Sainz cannot cover him. Vettel and Ocon won't try and cover him because that would be so bold from the positions they're in. So, can he catch the cars ahead? Yes. Can he overtake them by the end? I'm not sure.
Okay, Lewis, so head down. It's going to be hammer time all the way.
Hammer time all the way is the message to Lewis Hamilton.
The best thing for Hamilton is that Vettel is within a second of Ocon. So they're a little bit tit for tat, the top two, and they've got to drive bearing in mind each other. Ocon's looking in his mirrors, he's a little bit distracted. I'll tell you what, Vettel's close here.
Here they come, down the start-finish straight, and Ocon is going to put a lap here on Antonio Giovinazzi. Vettel sends it. Oh, they're so close to touching, but Ocon turns in, makes the corner, and holds the lead of the Grand Prix. Vettel is going to be trying again down towards turn 2, but he's a little bit too far back. Wow. Vettel's come under a bit of criticism for his wheel-to-wheel racing in the last few years, having spun quite a few times as a Ferrari driver, and that was a bold move from Vettel coming down to the first corner. I'm not sure if he fully went for it, or if it was half-hearted, or if it was well judged.
It's a blend between a lot of it, wasn't it?
Okay, Pierre, we will swap in turn 1. Driver swap turn 1.
Okay.
Driver swap turn 1, so that's Gasly swapping with his AlphaTauri teammate Yuki Tsunoda. So Gasly goes up into 6th place, Tsunoda down to 7th, and unsurprising really, Gasly is lapping much quicker.
I like that Vettel gave it a go there on Ocon. That was a chance, putting a lap on Antonio Giovinazzi. That's a chance that you need when you're the driver in second. He's suddenly got a little bit closer, and he's had the pressure there the whole time, but just been slightly too far away. This time he was a car length closer to Ocon and the braking zone for turn 1, and it was a bit half-hearted to the inside, enough that he could kind of back out of it, with Ocon giving him just a little bit of space at the apex. But he is just piling on that pressure.
And it must be different when you're leading the Grand Prix. Vettel's closing in again to the inside of Esteban Ocon. Again, he's not close enough to make the move, but there's pressure fighting for a 4th or a 5th or a 3rd or something, but leading a Grand Prix in an Alpine where you never had any chance to catch him must be quite something.
Hamilton fastest lap, nearly 4 seconds quicker than Ocon.
How many cars? Where am I? How many cars are you going to make me overtake?
Lewis, 4 cars to overtake for the win. We can do this. Ocon 25 seconds up the road. He's doing 22.8.
I'm in 4th still.
You are P5 at the moment. P5.
Lewis, you can win this.
That's Toto Wolff chipping in at the end. The rest of the message was with Peter Bonington, his race engineer, and then Toto Wolff, the team boss at Mercedes, coming over saying, Lewis, you can win this.
He can. The pace is extraordinary of Hamilton in clear air. 4 seconds quicker than Ocon and Vettel. They were maybe slightly slower because they were having a bit of a fight at turn 1, but he was still 4 seconds quicker than Carlos Sainz, 3.7 seconds quicker than Sainz in 3rd. The Mercedes is so quick, and no one can pit to cover him now. So it's just whether he can pass those 4 cars, the first one of which is Alonso, who's also flying. Fernando Alonso's 7 seconds off the race lead now. He's picked up where Hamilton left off on the back of Sainz.
Lap 51 of 70 in the Hungarian Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live. The final Grand Prix before a 4-week break over the summer, before we return at Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium at the end of August. Jenny Gow.
Yeah, and just looking at the tyres, and I think we could still have a really good battle out there for the minor places. What can Verstappen do as well? He pitted relatively recently, but from 7th place, Tsunoda, Latifi, Russell, Ricciardo and Raikkonen, I've got a feeling they all need to pit again potentially, because they came in around lap 20 to 24. They're never going to be able to get that far with this pace and pressure that they're having to race and use their tyres up. So I think they'll try and hold on, but I think they might have to stop again.
Well, Hamilton came in around the same time as them, didn't he? So, and he's looking fairly comfortable at getting to the end of the race. Okay, he's in a Mercedes, but we'll see what happens in that midfield pack. Oh, obviously he has pitted again. Sorry, my apologies. But before that, you felt like he could have got to the end of the Grand Prix. He's pitted again to try and close in on everyone rather than out of necessity. So we'll see what happens in the midfield, though. You're absolutely right, Jenny. Lap 51 of 70. Alonso is now on the back of Carlos Sainz. The 2 Spaniards battling over 3rd place.
Alonso's going to have DRS on Sainz here. He's roared up to the back of him, and this could be a bit racy between the Spaniards for a potential podium.
So currently Ocon is holding us up here. Hamilton pitted and has done an 18.7 first lap, so he'll be with us with 10 laps to go.
So Vettel being told Ocon's holding us up, Hamilton's going to be with us with 10 laps to go, so that is in about 8 laps time. Alonso not close enough to get Sainz. So Esteban Ocon has led this Grand Prix ever since the bizarre restart of the race when Hamilton was the only driver not to pit. Ocon actually was up into Was he second at the end of the first lap after all the crashes? I think he was. Him and Vettel were second and third after all the crashes at turn 1. Now he's been leading the race ever since. He's 1.3 seconds ahead of Sebastian Vettel in the Aston Martin. They are getting, well, not actually reeled in by Carlos Sainz. Sainz's pace has dropped off quite a lot. That's allowed Fernando Alonso in the Alpine to catch Sainz in the battle over third position. Hamilton is now 5th and is just 6 seconds back. It was 4 seconds quicker than Carlos Sainz on that last lap again, Lewis Hamilton.
He's going to come up to the back of these two very, very quickly if Alonso doesn't make it past Sainz before that. Alonso's flying, Sainz is dropping away. He had traffic on the last lap, which I think held him up a lot. Antonio Giovinazzi finally letting him through at turn 12. He's got another car to lap right now, which is Mick Schumacher as he comes out of the final corner. Mick should get out the way and allow these Spaniards to duke it out again. But Alonso is piling on that pressure for third. He's much quicker, having pitted later for the hard tyre.
Lap 53 of 70. Ocon leading, Vettel second. There's only a second between them, as there has been for pretty much the whole of this Grand Prix. Sainz is third, Alonso is fourth. Hamilton has the fastest lap of the race as well. If it finishes like this, if Hamilton makes no more progress, he will take the lead of the championship by 3 points over Max Verstappen. But Verstappen himself is trying to pressure Daniel Ricciardo into losing 10th position, which would give Verstappen a point. He's not too far back from George Russell in 9th place, which would give him another point. But at the moment, he is pointless in 11th position.
Hamilton is 3.5 seconds away from Fernando Alonso. In what, 4 laps, he's made it back to where he was, having taken a pit stop and a fresher set of tyres. It was a good call once again from Mercedes to do that, but he's lost 1 place, and that is Fernando Alonso, who's within DRS range of Carlos Sainz ahead. And that's going to make life harder for Hamilton, having a car ahead who's also got DRS. So he's not going to have a big closing speed advantage unless Alonso either passes Sainz or drops back.
Through the final corner come the two Spaniards, in fact come the two race leaders. Esteban Ocon ahead of Sebastian Vettel, and then there's a 7-second gap back to Carlos Sainz. Vettel not quite within the DRS range this time on the run down towards the first corner, but he's continuing to put the pressure on Esteban Ocon. Carlos Sainz is third, and Hamilton is right with them now. Sweeping past one of the back markers coming down into the first corner, and Hamilton on that last lap was 2 seconds quicker than Sainz and Alonso. This is make or break time, really, in terms of Hamilton's Grand Prix. It's whether he clears the Spaniards or gets stuck behind them.
I thought Sainz might be able to drag himself towards the top 2, but it is looking like Ocon and Vettel are not going to be caught by Sainz. They might get caught by Alonso, but Alonso's stuck behind his compatriot. And they also might get caught by Hamilton, but Hamilton is stuck behind the 2 Spaniards in 3rd and 4th. How quickly can Hamilton make it past, or Alonso make it past and put pressure on the top 2? Of course, if you're Ocon and Vettel, the one you're really fearing is Lewis Hamilton on those new medium tyres that he's roared up to the back of these the Ferrari and the Alpine with. He's going to get DRS, I think, already on Fernando Alonso, but Alonso's within DRS range of Sainz.
We'll hear from all of the top drivers and give you full feedback on this in the Checker Flag podcast.
Could you say to the FIA, hurry up, because what's the point I just want? Dirty air.
Yuki, we see everything, so keep your head down, keep focus.
Hamilton has DRS on the back of Fernando Alonso coming down towards turn 1, the battle for 4th place. Hamilton, is he going to go for it? Oh, he thinks about it, but there's a Alfa Romeo exiting the pit lane. Alonso locks up. The Alfa keeps out of the way. It's Kimi Raikkonen, and now Hamilton is behind Alonso again. Alonso covers the inside. Hamilton goes to the outside, tries to sweep all the way around the outside, but Alonso just very cleverly sweeps over, covers off the attack from Hamilton, but now Hamilton's got the run up towards turn 4. Is Alonso going to give him room? They go side by side into 4. Not close enough. Alonso holds the place, holds 4th position. He's fighting hard to keep Hamilton behind here.
What scrapping from Fernando Alonso. You just knew he wasn't going to get this one easily, even though Hamilton has the Mercedes with a fresher, softer compound tyre, and he was almost ahead into turn 2. But Alonso does not give any place up easily, whether it's 4th or 3rd in this Grand Prix. I raced against him for like 13th or 14th sometimes a few years ago, and he would still fight like this. He never backs down from a challenge. But he's got one on his hands now because he's dropped away from Carlos Sainz. He's now 2 seconds back from Sainz. He's not going to get DRS. And Hamilton once again coming through turn 13. Then there's one more corner and he's going to be having another launch at Alonso.
15 laps to go. Hamilton, after a strange tyre choice from Mercedes, dropped to the back of the field at the start of this Grand Prix. He's trying to fight his way back up the order, trying to pass Fernando Alonso, his teammate, his former teammate at McLaren, where the two actually came to a head, their relationship here in Hungary in 2007, when Alonso waited in the pits and blocked Hamilton from even doing a qualifying lap. That's where their relationship really started to deteriorate. Hamilton sliding his way on the exit of turn 2, almost a four-wheel drift from the English driver, as he still tries to close down on Alonso. And it's how quickly he can pass Alonso that will determine whether he can close in on the lead of the Grand Prix and win this race, because he's 10 seconds away from Esteban Ocon, who's in first place at the moment.
Alonso is the one here who can deny Hamilton a potential win. He's on the freshest tyres and his teammate is leading the race. So for Fernando Alonso, there's his own pride, his own position to be fourth. But if he can hold Hamilton back as long as possible, it gives his teammate Esteban Ocon a great shot at winning this race. Ocon has got Vettel still where he wants him, more than a second behind. It's 1.3, it's close, but it's manageable. It's Lewis Hamilton charging through that would be a bigger headache, and there might be nothing Ocon can do. But because Alonso's on the fresher tyres, he is able to just about keep him behind. But again, Hamilton's 7 tenths away. He's going to be closer to turn 1.
14 laps to go. Hamilton opens the DRS, and I just wonder, well, is he going to be able to make the move this time on the run down towards turn 1? Alonso looks in his mirrors, covers the inside. Hamilton then sweeps to the outside. He'll try and go past Alonso again into turn 2. Can he get the line that he wants here, Hamilton? To the outside again. Sends it late, sends it deep. Alonso's moving over, and Hamilton has to lock up the left front just a little bit. He then gets another run through turn 3, up towards turn 4, and Alonso covers the inside line again. Hamilton to the outside. You can't get through there no matter how hard he tries.
He will be so frustrated right now. Alonso's doing everything textbook in defence. He knows about the outside of turn 2 move, and that's twice now Hamilton's tried to make it through there, and Alonso's just too quick into the corner. He doesn't give Hamilton the chance to get side by side at the relevant point, so he's always just a little bit behind as they get towards the apex, and then the road's going to run out for him, and Alonso putting his car in the right point. Then he has to cover the inside at turn 4, which he's doing, and there is no chance that Hamilton can sweep around there unless he's ahead coming into the corner, but he's not. So Lewis needs to think about something else right now.
Vintage defensive work from Fernando Alonso. We're on lap 58 of 70, so 13 laps to go now. Esteban Ocon is still leading the Grand Prix for the Alpine, the teammate of Fernando Alonso. Vettel is still second, Sainz is still third in the Ferrari, who is going to be fourth. Run down towards turn 1 this time. I think Alonso got a slipstream there of a back marker. No, he didn't. He's too far back, but Hamilton wasn't close enough to make a move that time around then. Coming down towards turn 2.
Maybe used a more energy deployment on the previous lap and didn't have it on this time. So the laps are ticking away for Hamilton. And whilst Alonso's got to soak this up for the rest of the race, him doing it might be taking one for the team and meaning that Ocon and also Vettel don't come under attack. Even if Alonso eventually succumbs to this pressure, there might not be enough time for Hamilton to then pass Sainz and claw his way back to the top 2. Only 12 laps to go. Alonso's really defending hard, but he's also closing back in on Carlos Sainz, which would give him the DRS and make that defence a little bit easier.
Was he the hardest, his Sainz's radio?
And Alonso behind, 22-1, still defending hard.
Sainz being told Fernando Alonso behind is still fighting. I was plugging the Checker Flag podcast earlier before Yuki Tsunoda interrupted. So yeah, we'll hear from all the top drivers and give you all the reaction on the Checker Flag podcast, which you can download obviously from wherever you get your podcasting stuff from. And we're on lap 59 of 70 now. Verstappen trying to get past his former teammate Daniel Ricciardo, unable to do so in their fight over 10th place. Lewis Hamilton still just a bit too far back from Fernando Alonso coming into turn 1. Was he the hardest person to race against, Jolyon, Fernando Alonso?
Yes.
Like no doubt in your mind?
Well, he was hard, but also pretty much fair as well. He wasn't crashing into people in the midfield, whereas other people can be very hard but more out of control. Alonso measured hard with also in control, positioned his car perfectly.
I need some more power if you got any.
We need some more power, says Lewis Hamilton.
It's exactly that positioning that Alonso, he's just so good at in the defence. And I have to say, it's so good to see old-fashioned defending paying off.
Yeah.
So often you see a slower car just be a sitting duck at some point, as a Mercedes or a Red Bull or anyone else. It could be a McLaren or a Williams. The DRS is just too powerful, and for all the art of defending and the positioning and the late braking and all this, it comes to nothing because the faster car is just too fast and they make it through as inevitability. And Alonso's been on the receiving end of that so much in the last decade since he left Ferrari. McLaren, Honda with no power, and even with Alpine, he's not in a car that usually could fight with Mercedes, but this time he is, and he's making it work. He's under big pressure again, though.
Down towards turn 1. Hamilton has the DRS open. He's closing in again on Alonso, but he's again a bit too far back to get ahead of the Alpine driver. Alonso goes into 1 a bit deep, but still manages to take momentum through the corner and have a chance of holding off into turn 2. He has to go defensive again from Hamilton, but nowhere near as dramatically as he has done in the previous few laps. Hamilton's going to get another run up towards turn 4, but again Alonso will cover the inside line, and Hamilton isn't able to get through. Lap 60 of 70 in this fascinating Hungarian Grand Prix. That Esteban Ocon leads, Sebastian Vettel is second, Sainz is third, Alonso is fourth, still fighting for that 4th place ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Jenny Gao. We'll go to Jenny in a moment, with Esteban Ocon still leading, Vettel in second, Sainz third, Alonso fourth, Hamilton fifth. Sainz has made up 12 places from his grid position. Mazepin, Norris, Perez, Stroll, Leclerc and Bottas all out of the Grand Prix. Verstappen still out of the points-paying positions, despite being 8/10 off Ricciardo in 10th.
He's all over the place.
He's all over the place, says Hamilton. I'm not quite sure what he means by that, but 10 laps to go.
He's done absolutely nothing wrong, Fernando Alonso, assuming that's who Lewis Hamilton's talking about. Verstappen looks like he's finally making a move on Daniel Ricciardo, ahead into turn 2, goes around the outside, and that one might pay off.
Does it? Verstappen then up into 10th position, gets ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. That is 1 point in his championship fight with Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton, as it stands, is going to pick up 11, so that would be a 10-point swing, giving Hamilton the lead of the championship by just 2 points going into the summer break. Hamilton again not close enough to get past Fernando Alonso, and any chance that Hamilton has of winning the Grand Prix, I think, is now gone.
He's lost so many laps, and the tyres as well now start to overheat when you're behind another car for so long. They start to overheat, you lose the extra juice of a new tyre set. So the advantage he's got is dwindling.
Hey, come on.
Cool, mate.
Come on is the cheer from Verstappen. He's only 3 seconds behind George Russell in 9th position. Jolyon Palmer, myself, Jack Nicholls and Jenny Gao with you for the final stages, the closing stages of the Hungarian Grand Prix here on 5 Live. After this, we'll be heading to Henry Moran for coverage from today's 100 cricket matches. And then the live sport continues again at 1 a.m. when the Olympics get back underway on Dr. Adebayo's show. And then, of course, with 5 Live Olympic breakfast from 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. Lap 62 of 70. Hamilton not quite close enough again. Sainz is starting to fall back into this Alonso-Hamilton fight. Hamilton can't make the move. Jenny.
Yeah, just to let you know, Valtteri Bottas has a 5-place grid penalty for the next race in Spa for causing a collision at the start of this race. A lot of the drivers very vocal about the challenge that he put in, just said they wasn't very good driving. So 5-place grid penalty for him.
Seems about fair, really, Jolyon?
Yeah, clearly a fault. And you take the penalty then.
Hamilton so close to the back of Alonso coming into turn 4, but there's just nowhere to overtake into turn 4. Now they come up through turn 5 and into 6 and 7 again.
That's the problem he's got. He's so close every time into turn 4, but after turn 4 it's just 1 by 1 until they get round to the start of the lap again. So into turn 1, the right-hand hairpin, big opportunity, but Alonso's always just a little bit too far ahead to make it through there. Into turn 2's an opportunity as well, and that's been quite close. Sometimes Lewis on the outside, but Alonso just forcing him wide and there's nowhere through. Then they're close up to turn 4, and once it doesn't happen there, You've got to wait for the next lap.
Absolutely. They swing through the right-handers of turn 6 and 7 and then out to start yet another lap. Esteban Ocon's lead still 1 second over Carlos Sainz, over Sebastian Vettel in second place. No investigation necessary, and Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton are right together coming down towards turn 1 again. Hamilton has the DRS as they come down towards the first corner. This surely has to be Hamilton's opportunity. Alonso covers the inside. Hamilton goes to the outside, but Alonso still holds the place. Now they get on the power. He'll get the DRS on the run down towards turn 2 now, Lewis Hamilton. Alonso again covers the inside line. Can Hamilton get around the outside this time? No, it's the same story. Every single time, Fernando Alonso is holding on to that 4th position. Hamilton now up the hill into turn 4. Goes to the outside again. Still sends it to the outside and can't make the move stick. Fantastic racing between Alonso and Hamilton. And Alonso is driving the widest Formula 1 car maybe in the history of the sport. Remarkable stuff. Lap 63 of 70. Ocon still leading, just 8/10 clear of Sebastian Vettel behind him.
It was the same racing, wasn't it? The same moves by Hamilton with a little bit more intent, and he was a little bit closer, but Alonso just holding on in exactly the same manner. A little bit more of a staunch defence for a more stern attack, and it still wasn't doable.
He just rolls the car out wide, doesn't he, every single time in turn 2.
Guys, you see, he just moved over on me, man. Come on.
Copy, Lewis, we saw that.
Okay, into 4 that time. He gave Hamilton a squeeze, there's no doubt about that, but I think it was all right. Here we go again down into turn 1. Hamilton not close enough. 4/10 back. Lap 64 of 70. Verstappen is just 4/10 back from George Russell, meanwhile, in the fight over 9th place. So Verstappen looking to take another point away. The gap would be 2 points if it finishes like this. If Verstappen gains the place over Russell, it would be 1 point. But if Hamilton gets past Fernando Alonso, the gap would increase again. Here they come towards turn 4 again. Hamilton goes, oh, I thought he was going for the inside there, but he doesn't in the end. Brilliant stuff.
Sticking a nose in at turn 4 is, I mean, more of a bold move than putting a nose in at Copse Corner. Oh, so close, but still stuck behind Fernando Alonso. The top 2 on the last lap, by the way, were right together as well. Vettel's putting Ocon under heaps of pressure. This race is it's an absolute belter, this Grand Prix. Still don't know who's going to win it.
At that speed is so dangerous, man.
Hamilton still frustrated with that move from Alonso. To me, it seemed just about all right. Hard but fair from Alonso, as you'd expect.
It was right on the edge. Hamilton had to go on the curb to avoid being put on the grass, but he managed to go on the curb and not lose control of the car. Right on the edge for Fernando Alonso.
Right, lap 65 of 70. Hamilton again, right behind Alonso. He's really close this time. Oh, doesn't quite go for the inside, but Alonso's gone in too deep. This is Hamilton's big opportunity. Gets on the power, and does he get into 4th place? Yes, he does. Sweeps over, covers the inside. Alonso sends it back to the outside, but it's too little too late. Hamilton is up into that 4th position. He's 1.3 seconds behind Carlos Sainz. He's got 6 laps to try and catch him. Ocon leads, Vettel 2nd, Sainz 3rd. Hamilton finally passed Alonso up into 4th position. Alonso's defence finally got a little too tired, and just a tiny lock-up into turn 1 was enough to allow Hamilton through. Ocon still leading, still 1 second ahead of Sebastian Vettel, as he has been for about 60 laps of this 65 laps that we've had completed so far.
Finally, Alonso's defence is done, and what a defence it has been, but this time Hamilton was just closer as they came across the line. Alonso had to defend, went to the middle of the road and then went in a little bit deep, and immediately Hamilton is onto the back of Sainz. He can make it past Sainz on this lap as they come through turn 13. Then there's one more corner, and this is going to be a much easier one, I think, for Hamilton. Remember, Alonso had fresher tyres than Sainz.
Yeah, Sainz's tyres are 32 laps old and hard. Hamilton's tyres are 17 laps old and medium. So here comes Hamilton now looking for 3rd place on the charge down towards turn 1. How hard is Carlos Sainz going to fight? That's going to be the question. Hamilton immediately sweeps to the outside. This should be the opportunity on the run down towards turn 2. He's going to tuck into the slipstream of the Ferrari. He's not actually close enough this time coming into the 2nd corner. Lap 66 of 70. Sainz holding on to 3rd place. Ocon still leading, 1.2 seconds ahead of Sebastian Vettel. It's been a great fight for the lead, but all the focus has been of the recovering drivers coming up the order. Verstappen is still just 8 tenths behind George Russell in their fight over 9th place, as Russell and Latifi look to score Williams' first double points finish since I have no idea when, but I'll look it up.
I think if Hamilton had made it through on Sainz, he would have had a really outside chance of catching Vettel before the end of the race there, with the pace that he's got.
Now, if he'd have passed him
if he had it done there, 8 seconds in 5 laps. It's almost doable with the pace they've got, though. What, that's a second and a half per lap, and he's there, so almost was doable. I don't think it is now. So I think that extra lap that he's taken so many to pass Alonso, and that extra lap on Sainz has probably meant Vettel and Ocon are in a race on their own now to see if Ocon can win his first ever Grand Prix victory, or Vettel get another one in the Aston Martin.
2018 Grand Prix in Italy was the last time that Williams both scored points. Hamilton to the inside of Sainz. They go wheel to wheel for 3rd place. They both make an overtake on Daniel Ricciardo, the back marker, as they do it. Hamilton goes in a little deep. Sainz tries to fight back, but it is Lewis Hamilton who is ahead of Carlos Sainz and up into 3rd position. Sainz goes for it again, tries to get back round the outside of turn 2. He's still keeping his nose in there, but Hamilton makes the move. 3rd place for Lewis Hamilton. He's 9 seconds back off the race lead. That's as far as he's going to climb back through the order. But Hamilton finally, after a hard-fought few laps, is up into 3rd spot. Now the focus is Ocon versus Vettel for the lead of the Grand Prix in the closing stages.
What incredible racing, though, we've seen in this Grand Prix. Hamilton maximised the slipstream, got right up to the back of Sainz, and Sainz left him a bit of space.
That's the reaction, the frustration from Carlos Sainz as the podium slips away.
And just a few laps to go as well. He'd done such a good job. Remember that talk about don't pit me earlier on? All of that seems so long ago, but that's what got Carlos Sainz into this position. Went long. It was a great call from the driver to basically ignore the request from his team to pit. That's what got him into a position to get a podium, but with 3 laps to go, it's taken away from him, and now he's got Alonso trying to take that 4th spot from him as well.
Yeah, Alonso's very close to the back of the Ferrari as they come down towards turn 1. Esteban Ocon still leading, and I don't want to say he's got this one under control because that feels a bit curse of the commentator, but he's 1.6 seconds ahead of Sebastian Vettel now. That's a reasonably comfortable margin on lap 68 of 70.
He's driven well under immense pressure for the entire duration of this race. Esteban Ocon, ever since Lewis Hamilton pitted when no one else did for his slick tyres, Ocon has led with this amount of pressure. I think the furthest back Vettel's been is 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And then he pitted for an undercut and almost made it through. Almost made it through when they were lapping Antonio Giovinazzi as well. But now, the longer you go with a gap at the same pace, at the same point, 1.5 seconds, the more comfortable you feel with it. And Ocon must feel that 1.5 seconds right now is okay.
Hamilton is going to move to a 7-point lead in this World Championship fight if it finishes like this as we start the penultimate lap of the 2021 Hungarian Grand Prix. An iconic race, this one. It's going to go down in the history books of Formula One for a long, long time to come. Maybe not quite as iconic as the British Grand Prix collision between Hamilton and Verstappen. We'll be playing that again 100 years into the future, but this has certainly been one of the best Grand Prix in the last 20 years, I want to say. Is that a bit bold?
It's a modern classic, this is. It's been an absolute thriller with events that you just couldn't have anticipated. Hamilton on the last lap in 3rd in free air was nearly 3 seconds a lap quicker than Ocon again. If he had made it past Sainz that lap before, oh, it would be really close. It'd be on the tail of Vettel right now with a couple to go. But I think he is just a little bit too far back, even to challenge Vettel for 2nd.
Penultimate lap of the Grand Prix, Jenny Gow.
Yeah, Max Verstappen in P10 at the moment. He's trying to get past George Russell. Ricciardo is in the way for a long time. He's got gloopy old tyres, so Raikkonen's managed to overtake him, but that battle for 8th, 9th and 10th is still going.
Yeah, Verstappen unable to get ahead of George Russell at the moment. Lap 69 of 70. If you were tuning in to hear the 100 cricket, then that will be on in a few minutes here on BBC Radio 5 Live once we're done with the conclusion of this Hungarian Grand Prix, because we had a half-hour delay at the start of this race when a red flag was flown thanks to a pile-up, basically, at the first corner that Valtteri Bottas instigated and wiped out Lando Norris, and Charles Leclerc got wiped out by Lance Stroll. Max Verstappen picked up huge damage. That's why he's all the way back down the order. Lewis Hamilton ended up last before the start of the race again because he had to come in for dry tyres after everyone else had already pitted. That's about what happened. Hamilton has now fought his way back up the order into third place, and Esteban Ocon, ever since pretty much the start of the race, about lap 4, has been at the head of the field, and Alpine are looking to secure, well, their first win since 2013 Abu Dhabi. Kimi Räikkönen, I'll look it up, but it's been a long time.
2013 Melbourne, I think, Kimi Räikkönen.
So he won 2012 Abu Dhabi, didn't he? Yeah. And then 2013 Melbourne. That's how long it's been since the Alpine team, based in Enstone, they were Lotus back then they changed to Renault, then they hired Jolyon Palmer, and now Esteban Ocon is going to win the Grand Prix for them for the first time since 2013, and his first ever victory in Formula One. Hamilton is just a second off the back of them though, but he's not got enough time because there are 2 corners to go, and Esteban Ocon, the 24-year-old Frenchman, swings through the final corner in the blue Alpine. He has soaked up so much pressure, and Esteban Ocon, in a remarkable Grand Prix, takes his first Formula One win. Vettel across the line in second, just 0.8 of a second ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who after a superb recovery drive takes the lead of the Drivers' Championship going into the summer break. He'll be 7 points clear of Max Verstappen at the top of the standings. But Esteban Ocon, what a drive, what a win. What a way to deal with the pressure from a 4-time world champion, Sebastian Vettel, right behind him all the way through the Grand Prix.
By the way, Pierre Gasly's going for fastest lap, which would take 1 point away from Lewis Hamilton if he can do it. He managed to have a free pit stop and is charging right now through the middle sector. I think he's going to do the fastest of the race, so that's going to be tight. But what a Grand Prix that we've just seen. Ocon, I'm so impressed with him able to deliver that under the pressure of suddenly being right at the front, having a 4-time champ behind you in Sebastian Vettel. Incredible job.
Yes, guys.
Well done, mate. You just won the Hungarian Grand Prix. Well done, mate.
And Esteban Ocon, a really great story. He wasn't brought up with some of the riches of some of the other Grand Prix drivers, really had to work for it. Pierre Gasly does get the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, so Hamilton's advantage only goes 6 points clear now, I believe, of Max Verstappen at the top of the championship. And what a Grand Prix that was. Ocon's last win, Ben points out, using hashtag BBCF1, was GP3 Spain in 2013, the last time he won a single-seater race, Esteban Ocon.
About 3 months after, what year was that?
Oh, yeah, that 2013, so it would have been maybe the same month as Renault's last win.
Yeah, 3 months after Renault.
Maybe not, maybe 2. Because it would have been March, wouldn't it? March was Melbourne, and then Spain would have been in May. Yeah, wow. So there's been a same drought of victories for the both of them.
Well done, Sebastian. P2.
Oh man, I tried the whole race. Man, following is so difficult. We're faster. Oh. Sorry, guys.
Frustration for Vettel, you have to say, finishing in second position. But nevertheless, a very, very strong drive from Vettel. And Fernando Alonso congratulating his teammate Esteban Ocon. Alonso, a big part of that win for Esteban Ocon and the Alpine team. And 10 years before Renault's last win and Ocon's last win, it was Fernando Alonso who took his first ever win in Budapest in 2003 for this team. So a load of nice synergy there. Vettel's broken down on the, or had to stop the car on the slowing down lap. First points for Nicholas Latifi in Formula One as well, with an 8th place finish. George Russell gets his first points for Williams. He's come to a halt as well at the exit of the pit lane. But the order: Ocon, Vettel, Hamilton, Sainz, Alonso, the top 5. Gasly, Tsunoda, Latifi, Russell, Verstappen, the top 10. Raikkonen, Ricciardo, Schumacher and Giovinazzi, the 14 finishers. Out of the Grand Prix were Mazepin, Norris, Perez, Bottas, Leclerc and Stroll.
Wow. Okay, remind us to drink, please. That was awesome. Yeah.
Allez Alpine, allez les Bleus, yes, yes!
Allez Alpine, Allez Le Bleu, says Esteban Ocon. I'm not quite sure where he's going because he hasn't come into the pit lane at the end of that lap, so he's driven straight past the pits and he's now on the start-finish straight, and I don't know if he knows where he's going to be going there.
I think he thought it was a Monaco finish where you drive onto the start-finish straight, or the same as you do after qualifying, but he hasn't come into the pits. He's either got another lap to do, sure he doesn't have fuel for another lap, so he'll have to switch it off and run his way back up the pit lane. They're all waiting for him at Parc Fermé.
What an amazing race, an absolute spectacle, just what we wanted to kind of round off the first part of the season. Sebastian Vettel now kind of trying to make his way back, just high-fiving some of the marshals as they stand around. Everybody paying tribute to the marshals this weekend after a horrific accident at Brands Hatch yesterday saw one of them pass away. So a lot of people paying tribute to the Orange Army, but right now Esteban Ocon, he throws his headrest to the side, reattaches his steering wheel, gets out of the car. What an iconic moment in this young 24-year-old's career. The Frenchman absolutely overjoyed. You could hear the emotion with the team. It means the world to these 20 drivers to go out there. Make sure you download the Checkered Flag podcast. We will have all the reaction to this race as Vettel makes his way towards the podium points as well and the places, because he also hasn't been able to get his car back. From start to finish, this has been the most extraordinary F1 race I can remember.
How long is this Checkered Flag podcast going to be, Jenny? Like, we're going to do this podcast, it's usually like half an hour. Like, we're going to be here till midnight talking about all this.
We're going to be exhausted and exuberant and all of those things. We're going to feel like we've just been the people that have competed in that F1 race. It was an absolute spectacle. Thank you for staying with us for the whole thing. I know it's been a bit of an epic, but my word, it was worth it. We go all over again in Spa, right at the end of August. It is now the break. Lewis Hamilton goes into it with a 6-point lead in the championship. What a turn of events. Right, let's breathe. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. My thanks to the whole team. Next up, let's get the latest news with Joe Critcher.